think we're gonna get started. Hi, my name is JP Benoit. I am filling in as the chair of the Planning and Zoning, Wallingford Planning and Zoning. And I actually have with us our new town planner, Kevin Pagini. There you can see.
Kevin Pagini. It's nice to meet everybody.
Oh, nice to have you here alongside. We are going to go through a few things, but what I'd like to first do is ask all of us to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I see we have a few commissioners. We have James Fitzsimmons. He will be the vice chair for today. We have Jeff Cohan, which I see over there. Rocco Matarazzo is our secretary. Jamie Hine is, I think I see him. Where's he? There he is. Jamie Hine. How you doing, Jamie? One of our alternate commissioners, and Stephen Allenson, which Stephen, I'd like to have you fill in as a commissioner. I also have Thomas Talbot here. He's off to the side. Cheryl Ann Tooby, who is, I think she's here, right? The recording secretary, and Amy Torrey, who is the zoning enforcement officer. And I think that's it. Now, just a few things that I want to go over. I'd like to begin this brief overview of the meeting guidelines, as this meeting is a remote meeting. The meeting utilizes the GoToMeeting platform. Virtual meetings do not lend themselves to more than one speaker at a time or numerous devices running at the same location. If you can, kindly mute your microphone, or I will have to do it. I will call upon you when it's your turn for the floor. I will roll call the board members when time for discussion, questions, or voting. There's a chat feature that enables you to type a question or type a request for opportunity to comment. And that would be during the public hearing. I will refer to the chat bar to call upon attendees one at a time and give you the floor. When it is your turn to speak, whether as an applicant or member of the public, please first identify yourself with your full name and address, and please stick to the regulations when you are speaking. Now, you do this. Yeah. I'm going to mute all. There we go. So without further ado, we have a pretty packed agenda. Can I ask for a vote from the commission to consider approval of the April 12th, 2021 minutes?
Mr. Chairman.
I can hear you.
Mr. Chairman, I have actually a correction to the minutes on page 8.
Okay.
On the motion regarding the purchase of the property at 100 Barnes Road for the police department, I had asked for an amendment to say it asked to add and in support of the plan of conservation development, and it just said asked to add. So it should ask to add the motion, you know, the commission, the reason for supporting the motion was it says it has to conform to our local regulations and to add in support of the plan of conservation development. We're missing
Okay.
and in support of the plan of conservation development.
Okay. We will make that amendment. So I have a motion for approval as amended. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor with the
Aye.
sign of an aye? Any
Aye.
nays?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, motion. Yeah, and me, aye, sorry. I'm not used to doing this side of it. Sorry about that. The first public hearing special permit, convenience store fueling facility, 7-Eleven Inc., 1033 North Colony Road, application 412-20. There is no action that is required. So we will move on. Now, I believe there's a few that let's just maybe go through for some housekeeping items. The text amendment, planning and zoning commission food trucks, there was no action to be had for that one. For number 3, so that was number 1, that was number 5. For number 3, it's a special permit application 402-21 for 1070 North Farms Road LLC 117 and 2 Northrop Road. They're asking for a request to open and continue public hearing, no application presentation. So, all right, well, we'll get 3 done. We just need to get, really, we don't have to do anything on it. We have to vote.
You're gonna open a public hearing. Opening a public-
Okay, so we actually have to hear all the information first.
No.
We
You
don't, okay.
don't have to do anything except vote, open the public hearing and continue it without presentation.
Okay.
Same
So-
we did last.
So the request, like we did last month, is to open, to vote to open the public hearing and vote to continue the public hearing for next month. So, do I have a motion from any of our commissioners or I should say first, any comments from our commissioners? Yes, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're talking about the special permit for North Farms, correct? Number 3,
Correct.
request to open and continue the public hearing. Yeah, you know, I kind of objected to, you know, Amazon doing this last month, you know, for, you know, we open the public hearing, but we don't really do anything. We start the clock ticking and, you know, we went through the pros and cons of it last time, but I'll just give my gentle objection again that I think it puts us and the applicant in a tough position because sure, we can, you know, deny the application if they don't have time, but that's really not our intent. Our intent is to get all the information in a timely manner, you know, so we can make a good decision. So I just want to add that again to the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Anybody? If not, I actually concur with Commissioner Cohen on this. I do get a little nervous about setting precedent, but you know, I guess the question is, where do we do with this moving forward right now? Yes,
Mr. Chairman, if I
Hines.
may.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have any indication, this is the second application in 2 months where this has happened. Do we have any indication from the applicants as to why or why they're looking to follow this process? Or what the purpose is, or what they see the benefit of this as being?
Tom, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, the reason they're doing this is because they had, there was a peer review that was in process, and they were under the impression that they were going to have the peer review information in time to open up the public hearing this month. So in preparation for that, they sent out notice. Now, as it turns out, we didn't get the peer review information, so they weren't able to go ahead. But because they did send out notice. So really, the only reason that they're doing it, they're willing to give up 30 days of their time in order to not have to renotice. That's all that this is about. It's not a ploy in any other. It's not a ploy in any other respect that I'm aware of. It's simply because they thought they were going to be able to go ahead. So they sent out notices. Now it turns out that they couldn't. So they just don't want to send out, they just don't want to renotice.
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Talbot. I think that, I mean, that makes sense to me. So the only other thing I wanted to have clarified is that my understanding is that there is a governor's executive order that extends deadlines up to an additional 60 days. Is that, am I right about that?
I believe those are all still in effect, but they're still in effect, if that's your question, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like they're trying to meet the what is it, the 60-day deadline for opening the hearing from the first day that it appeared, that the application appears
Yeah,
on the.
That's not why they're doing this at all. They're not doing this because they're running up against the deadline. It's because they had already sent out the notices.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. So bringing it back to the commission, what's the commission's desire on this?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
yeah.
Mr. Fitzsimmons.
you know, this is whether the applicant is a large applicant or just someone who wants to add an accessory apartment. This is the applicant is the one who pays the fee. They're the ones who pay the fee. They're making the application to us. You know, the knife cuts both ways. So the clock starting for them is as difficult for them as it is for us. But I think because you indicated, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner Hines said the same thing, the governor's executive order gives everyone just a little more time right now. I'm not opposed to opening it because they know what they're doing, and the calendar is the calendar. So if they're not ready, then they're not ready. They can always withdraw and reapply. But I understand the notice, so I'm not opposed to their request because quite frankly, the calendar does cut both ways.
Clock does start ticking. So again, bringing it back to the commission, do I have a motion for this application to open and continue the public hearing?
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, I move that we open up the public hearing for application 401-21, special permit for a 219,000 square foot warehouse facility on 179.85 acres. No, excuse me. Special permit 402-21 for a 25,000 warehouse office facility on 46.05 acres on property located at 1171 Northrop Road and 2 Northrop Industrial Park Road East. And
Thank you,
continue it to next month.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Cohan, second. All in favor, starting with Commissioner Fitzsimmons,
Yes.
Cohan,
Yes.
Matarazzo,
Yes.
Allenson,
Yes.
and I is yes. So the motion carries for that. But moving on to the number 6, site plan, 6 Research LLC, 4A Research Park. It's application 210-21. It's new business. There is no action requested at this time, just so everybody knows that. So we're going to go back to the public hearing, and we are going to start the public hearing for application 401-21, special permit warehousing, Montaney Construction, 5 Research Parkway. Can I ask the secretary to read into the minutes all the correspondence, please?
Sure. Do you want me to read in that, the legal notice
Correct.
prints?
Yeah, do the legal notice first and then the correspondence, please. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have a legal notice 401-21, a special permit for a 219,000 square foot warehouse facility on 179.85 acres on property located at 5 Research Parkway, zones IX, WPD, and it's a continuation. We have correspondence dated March 31st, 2021 to Montaney Construction. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Referencing special permit application 401-21 on 5 Research Parkway. We have correspondence dated April 1st, 2021 to Mr. Tom Talbot, town planner. We have interdepartmental referral dated January 8th, 2021, signed by the fire marshal. Some correspondence dated April 5th, 2021 to James Seichter, chairman, PZC. Correspondence dated April 7th, 2021 to Tom Talbot, town planner. Correspondence dated April 9th, 2021 to Tom Talbot, town planner. An interoffice memorandum to Thomas Talbot, acting town planner, from Eric Kruger, senior engineer, dated April 8th, 2021. Correspondence dated what's this, May 13th, 2021, from Allison Kapuczynski. We have some correspondence to Planning and Zoning Commission from Department of Engineering dated April 28th, 2021. Correspondence to Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission dated April 29th, 2021. Correspondence referencing executive summary. This is dated received April 30th, 2021. Correspondence dated April 22nd, 2021 from to Thomas Talbot, town planner. Correspondence dated May 2nd, 2021 to Kevin, I'm not sure how you say it, Tagnini, Planning and Zoning Commission. Correspondence dated May 3rd, 2021 to Kevin I don't want to keep butchering his name. How do you say it? Pagini?
Yep, Pagini.
Pagini, I'm sorry.
Pagini.
Correct.
Pagini, I got it. We got a memorandum to Kevin Pagini, town planner, from Aaron O'Hare, environmental planner, dated May 5th, 2021. You've got correspondence to Planning and Zoning Commission from Department of Engineering dated April 28th, 2021. Correspondence to Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission from Jack Aragoni dated May 4th, 2021. Correspondence to Wallingford Town Planner Kevin Pagini. This is dated 5/6/2021. Some correspondence dated, I'm gonna go with the received May 4th, 2021. From Joan Mungner. Say that one right. Correspondence dated, May 6th, 2020, I'm sorry. Yep, May 6th, 2021. To Kevin Pagini. Correspondence to Dennis Senaviva. This was dated May 6th, 2021. Interdepartmental referral dated March 11th, 2021, signed by I'm gonna say that's again the fire marshal, possibly. Can't read that signature. Correspondence dated April 26, 2021 to Nicholas Giordano. Interdepartmental.
Secretary.
Yep.
I think you went past to the next one.
Did I go to the next one?
I think you're in the next one.
Yep.
I think you added a few
I went
extra.
into 403. So the last correspondence would have been from Dennis Senaviva, or to Dennis Senaviva,
No.
dated.
Was it
No?
the Jack Aragoni? Is that the last one? Oh, no, I'm sorry. There's another one. Hold on.
No, 40221, right?
Yeah, so your last one, which was your last one?
Dennis Senaviva.
It's the one before that. Dennis is actually for the other application.
It's listed as 40221, but okay. So it would have been
Right, 401, no, okay, yeah, you're right. Nope, okay.
40221, where are we?
Yeah.
121?
40221, you got it. I think Dennis is the only one that it's not that one, so.
Okay. Yep,
I
you're
think
right. Yep.
everything else
Yeah,
we
no,
have.
no,
gotten
you're right.
it.
Yep, it's 40121. Yep.
Okay, so,
No, that's it.
okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Your desk is clear on that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, thank you. I have a couple additional documents here, and I'm not sure if they're part of the record or not. For some reason in my packets, I had two documents designated 40121A. I had the March 31st, 2021 letter that was referenced earlier, but I also have another 401-21A that's a March 29th, 2021 memo to Aaron O'Hare from Eric Kruger. I'm not sure if that's part of the record or not, but it's in my document. It's in my packet. I then have I have a 401-21F that was not referenced. That is again a memo to Aaron O'Hare from Eric Kruger, dated April 7th, 2021.
That probably-
I think it's certain, but I suspect what's happening is attachments that we see in previous months
Right,
are being, the same numbers are being used over. For example, the 401-21A, I think there's a 401-21A that was nothing more than a request for no action
okay.
from March. I'm not sure. I suspect that, I'd have to see what,
Yeah, and I'm not trying to confuse anything. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as to what's part of the record and what's not part of the
I
record.
think those were from last month, I thought.
I think what happened was anything of substance could be in this latest set of attachments with a different number. A couple of things are not here at all. For example, I know that the letters just asking for no action, that they're not in this packet here. They are in the file, but you don't have them because it's really, they're not really relevant at this point in time.
Yeah, no, I could understand that. The two documents I just referenced are not those kind of documents, and maybe they're located somewhere else in our packets, but these are, these are actual memos from Eric Kruger.
I think everything from Eric Kruger, if you look at,
Yeah, it might be that.
there's.
And then the only other document I wanted to mention, I want to take a look here at my, all right, I think I'm all set then.
I think
What?
they should all be in here.
Okay, so maybe what we need to do is just make sure we send those out to the commissioners.
I think you already have them.
Okay,
I think they're.
they're
what was-
labeled differently now?
Yeah, I think that it had a separate label for an earlier month. All went out under, if you look at this 401-21G, you'll see that it's about 4 or 5 different memorandums. And they're all from Eric to,
Yeah.
only the top one is to me, all the rest of them are to Aaron.
Okay, so
Mr.
they're all incorporated into a different, into G, is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna ask. Look, if you look, there's different memos on this specific exhibit, if you will, 401-21G. There looks like there's a few in here from Aaron O'Hare, Eric Kruger on all the different dates.
Fair enough. I just want to make sure that we're all referencing the same documents and the same numbers.
Totally appreciate it. Thank you for your help. Any other questions on the correspondence? If not, we will get into the application. I just want to, before we get started with this application, just talk very briefly about a few things. One, at this time, we do not have the final plans that were submitted or approved by the Inland Wetlands Commission. And we also have not received the revised traffic information for the peer review. So we are somewhat flying, I would say, with a little challenging times, and I do struggle a little bit with not having all the information. So if I can I ask I'm not sure who the applicant is that will be presented, but can you say your name, where you're from, and also just let me know how long your presentation will be, because you know, that we're a little behind on this one, and I will speak for myself. I don't particularly like having not all the information in front of us, which is kind of customary for planning and zoning.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tom Cody. I'm an attorney at the firm of Robinson and Cole. Our office is located at 280 Trumbull Street in Hartford, and I am here on behalf of the applicant, Montaney Construction. I do have a number of members of our professional team here that I just thought I would introduce before I get into our presentation and specifically to answer your questions that you had up front. From Montaney, Byron DeLuke and Rob Peters are here. From Amazon.com, we have Jessica Schumer, an Economic Development Manager, and Michael Kelleher, Senior Program Manager. And then with our professional team from BL Companies, Jeff Dewey, Chris Gagnon, Michael Dion, and Wayne Violette. Mr. Chairman, you asked about two items specifically at the start. Number one, the report from the Wetland Commission. As I understand it, the full report has been forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it is in your packet. The report from the environmental planner with a copy of the notice of decision from the commission, and all of the conditions of approval are included in that packet, which was transmitted to the commission. That occurred, as I understand it, at the end of last week. With respect to your peer review, VN Engineers completed a first peer review, and we, the applicant, responded to that on about April the 7th. And then again, we made an additional submittal on the 30th of April with additional information that was specifically requested of us on certain issues. So as I understand it, VN has not yet reviewed the supplemental materials that we have submitted to the commission. We look forward to that review being completed. However, there is much to cover, and we think that tonight can be a very productive evening for the commission and the public with our presentation, which can cover many, many issues. And our presentation, I expect, Mr. Chairman, will take about 45 minutes in total. So with that, let me begin. Jeff Dewey from BL Companies will be running a PowerPoint presentation for the commission's benefit and the public's benefit. So I would ask if Jeff could be given the control to begin that PowerPoint.
Just give me a second so I can find them. See, find Jeff Dewey. Oh, there he is. Okay. Mr. Dewey is a presenter.
Great, thank you. Great. So the next slide after this opening slide, this cover sheet, is our presentation outline for this evening. I will provide just a brief overview of the site history and the project itself that's the subject of the application. Jessica Schumer will present to you the operations for the facility. Next, Michael Dion will review traffic-related considerations, including the traffic impact study that was prepared and answers to some specific questions and comments that have been raised. Wayne Violette will review the project landscaping. That will lead to building design, which Chris Gagnon will present. And then Jeff Dewey will wrap up with site design, civil engineering, and construction. I will provide a brief summary and conclusion, and that will be our presentation for this evening. One other point, Mr. Chairman, regarding the status of the peer review by VN and their review of our supplemental submission, we would like to be clear at the start. We expect that the commission will want to continue the public hearing after tonight. And we certainly consent to such an extension of time. So with that, Jeff, would you advance the slide? And I'd like to just briefly orient the commission to the site. The site, of course, is the former Bristol-Myers Squibb facility located at 5 Research Parkway. Overall, it is about 180 acres in size, and it is zoned IX for industrial expansion. The site is outlined in red or orange in the center of this aerial photo. And what you are seeing on the aerial photo was taken a couple of years ago when the Bristol-Myers facility was still intact on the site. This aerial photo is oriented with left to, or I should say north is to the left of the sheet. So if you rotated it 90 degrees clockwise, you would have north at the top. We did this because of the rectangular shape of the site. Running along the bottom of this aerial photo, which is on the west side of the site, is I-91. Parallel to that is Research Parkway, which borders the western part of the site. Carpenter Lane, you can see on the left side of this image, that is the northerly boundary of the property. The Eversource utility transmission easement runs down along the east and southeasterly part of the site. Route 68 is at the right-hand side of the screen. That is the southern end of the site. Principal access to this site is from Research Parkway. There is also a separate driveway into the former child care facility. There are 2 main parking fields located on the site, one at the northerly end and one at the southerly end of the site. Both of these areas are still largely intact. The Bristol-Myers development had not only the main building, but also several other ancillary buildings, all of which have been demolished and removed. The site also has 2 man-made ponds that are located right there, as the cursor is showing, sort of on either side of the north-south driveway that runs through the site. Next slide, please. So the site was originally developed in 1984 for Bristol-Myers Squibb. A series of additional improvements and expansions took place throughout the 90s, including the expansion of the power plant, and site excavation and an additional wing were added to the building in the late 90s. A materials handling building was added, and other improvements in the area were added. In 2018, a project was brought to the commission for approval of 2 warehouse buildings with over 1.1 million square feet of building space. That application was approved by the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, and the special permit application for that was denied by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Now, we bring you an application for a warehouse project which proposes a much smaller building than what was proposed in 2018. The building proposed in this application is 219,000 square feet in size, which is 880,000 square feet smaller in size than the 2018 application. Now, this application has already undergone significant review by town staff and peer review consultants during the inland wetlands permit application process. Aaron O'Hare, the environmental planner, Eric Kruger with the Water Division, and Allison Kapuscinski, town engineer, all reviewed the wetland permit application and supporting analysis and documentation, including the stormwater management plans and the sediment and erosion control measures that were proposed. Jeff, if you could advance the slide, please. George Cotter was retained as a peer review consultant. He completed a thorough review of the erosion and sediment control plans, and SLR was retained to conduct a review of the stormwater management plans for the project. We believe that through the comments provided by the town staff, as well as the peer review consultants, the application was greatly improved as a result of the input, and we do appreciate that input. The Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission approved the wetland permit on April 7th. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the environmental planner has forwarded the report from the commission to this commission, and it is in your packet. One of the key conditions of approval for the inland wetlands permit is that an independent erosion control plan implementation monitor will monitor the construction activities to ensure that the erosion control plan is implemented effectively. This independent monitor will report its findings to the town staff. The monitor will be selected by the town, and the cost will be borne by the permittee. Now, turning to the special permit application that's before you, we have received staff review comments from Tom Talbot. We also received the initial peer review from VN Engineers. And as I indicated a few minutes ago, we have responded to VN on both April the 9th and April the 30th. And so we do look forward to the completion of their review. So if you would advance the slide, Jeff, we can begin to sort of talk about the proposed site plan for this application. Again, the site is zoned IX. This slide shows the existing conditions on the site following the demolition of the Bristol-Myers Squibb buildings. In the dark areas, you can see where buildings were previously located. You can also see the two parking fields, which are still visible at the site today. And this diagram, this graphic of the existing site conditions highlights one of the main design goals that this team had at the beginning of the project, and that was to design a project that took advantage of as many of the existing development infrastructure aspects as possible. We identified as key planning elements the primary access point from Research Parkway, the main north-south driveway running through the site, and all of the existing impervious surfaces located where Bristol-Myers had their buildings and parking areas. Now, the next slide shows the proposed site plan. And this plan accomplishes the goal of orienting the proposed new building, access, circulation, and parking largely in areas that have already been developed on the site. Principal access to the site will be retained at Research Parkway, with a secondary access, limited access, located on Carpenter Lane, the details of which we will discuss in just a few minutes. The site plan complies with zoning bulk and dimensional criteria contained in the zoning regulations. And at this point, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Jessica Schumer from Amazon, who will describe for you how the proposed facility will operate.
Hey, Tom. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. For the record, my name is Jessica Schumer. I am an economic development manager with Amazon. My office is located at, well, I haven't been there in a while, but it does exist at 7 West 34th Street in Manhattan. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here this evening. What I would like to do is sort of take you through what this site is and how it fits into Amazon's larger logistics network, and how it would operate by taking you sort of through a 24-hour life cycle of the site, which does operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the site that we're proposing here this evening is what we refer to as our last mile delivery station. Basically, it's the last stop a package takes before it goes to our customers' doorsteps. So when any of you who use Amazon go on your phones or your computers to order a package, are, that product will start in one of our fulfillment centers, like the one that we have in Windsor. It will then get selected, shipped, packaged and shipped into our delivery network, going usually to a sortation center and then arriving at your door one of three ways: the Postal Service, the UPS, or increasingly our own last mile delivery network. So at this site, most of our product would arrive in the overnight hours via line haul or 18-wheeler tractor trailers. We anticipate at a site of this size that we would get somewhere between 25 and 35 tractor trailers over the 24-hour period, again, with around 80% of them arriving in the overnight hours. They would come off 91, go on to research, and then make their way to Research Parkway and turn into the site on those red lines. And where they would unload is that red area. And we have, I think, proposed around 17 docks here. So there's plenty of space. They're not backing up. They're arriving usually no more than 1 or 2 per hour. And so it is somewhat staggered that way. Also in the overnight hours, the majority of our associates arrive on site. These are full-time, mostly full-time Amazon employees, although we do supplement with part-time and seasonal work. And I should note the operations I'm describing are how this site operates 10 to 10 and a half months of the year during the normal year. Obviously, things are a little bit different during our peak holiday period. So in the overnight hours, our largest shift of associates come on site, and they will park in this yellow area, and they're the ones that would be using that Carpenter Lane entrance that Tom mentioned. At this site, we anticipate, and I'm being conservative in these numbers, that we would employ somewhere between 150 to 200 full-time Amazon associate roles. These roles all pay at least $15 an hour. It's usually a little bit more in the Northeast, and that's the starting wage. Also on day one, all of these associates get full benefits. It's the same benefits package that I or any of our other corporate employees get. So it's access to medical, dental, vision plans, 401k matching, life insurance, very generous paid family leave, including up to 4 months off for new mothers. And so that's what this yellow area is for, those associates. So they come in overnight and they unload the product and get it ready for the next morning. They take it off the trucks and they basically put it into baker's trays full of hockey bags. Then in the morning, what happens is we have our third-party delivery service van partner drivers begin to arrive on site. Now, these people arrive in their personal vehicles and they would pull into this blue area, which would have a bunch of Amazon Sprinter vans on site. Now, these are third-party drivers, so they are third-party logistics companies that Amazon contracts with. They're usually run by local entrepreneurs or small business owners who want to set up their own logistics route, and they're the ones that employ the drivers. The vans themselves are owned by Amazon, but then leased to those delivery service companies. So most of this parking area would be filled with vans. The first group of drivers would arrive on site somewhere between, usually around 9:30 in the morning, after the morning rush hour. There'll be some empty spaces where they'll pull their personal vehicles in. They'll get into the first set of vans, and at this site, we anticipate that's about 120 drivers at a time. So they'll pull into the green area where they're loaded by a skeleton crew of associates and the drivers. And that's loading, they load over 20 to 30 minutes. And then as soon as they're loaded, they depart. So they're not all departing at once. As they're loaded, they head out. So you'd have about 120 vans departing at 10 a.m. And then they're out for the day. And I'll explain where they go and what they do. But after they've loaded, or while they're loading, the next group of delivery service partner drivers come on site. They'll pull into the empty spaces that have been vacated by the vans that just left. They'll leave their personal vehicles there, get into new vans, load and leave. And so this cycle repeats until all the vans have left. And again, during the off holiday period, the normal part of the year, we anticipate somewhere around 300 to 400 vans doing this on a given day. So that's 3 to 4 cycles of vans. And they are all out of the building by 11:30 or noon at the latest. Now the vans are out for 10-hour shifts. They're not coming back and forth to the site. So once they're out, they're out. It's a 45-minute delivery radius of the site. Although it's not a perfect circle. It really does depend where else, where we have other dots on the map. But it's generally a 45-minute drive time. So then the site is quiet for a little while. And then in the late afternoon, we have something called our Amazon Flex program. So remember I said that those line haul tractor trailers, 80% come overnight, but we do get some during the day. And so what we use is Amazon Flex. These are people in their own personal vehicles who can sign up to be a Flex driver the same way you can sign up to drive for Uber or for Lyft. But instead of delivering people, you're delivering packages. And at this site, we anticipate somewhere around 90 Flex drivers per day would come on site in that late afternoon period. They would get packages and they would leave, and they wouldn't come back to the site unless they had an undeliverable package. So again, the site goes quiet for a little bit. And then around 7 p.m., that first group of van drivers that left around 10 in the morning starts to return to the site. They'll come back, they'll do a safety check with their DSP managers who are also on site. They'll pull into some of the empty spaces. They'll get into their personal vehicles and they'll leave. And that sort of opposite what happened in the morning happens in reverse in the evening until around 10 p.m. when everyone is gone. And this blue lot is now back to Amazon vans. The trucks come back and we sort of start the cycle all over again. The only thing I would add is that the DSP drivers who we talked about, they are third-party employees, but we do mandate that they all also get paid at least $15 an hour. And at a site of this size, we anticipate somewhere between 300 to 400 full-time driver roles available. And so that's pretty much the operations of the site. I'll let Mike Dion talk about traffic, but I'm happy to answer questions if and when they should arise. Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, Mike Dion with BL Companies. Our office is at 355 Research Parkway in Meriden, Connecticut. Just a little recap of what was discussed already, that this is going to be a last mile package delivery station. It's 219,000 square feet. We are proposing 1,508 parking spaces. This is the former Bristol Miles Squibbs Company site. And just based on the size of the property and what was on the site, it is a previously approved Office of State Traffic Administration site. So that means any change that we make to the site, we have to go back to OSTA with that. So that is another layer of review that will happen, is that OSTA is going to review all of our traffic information and what we propose for the site and any off-site improvements. Next slide, please. And just a little recap of what we have done. We did a lot of data collection for this site. And what we did do is that we did have an initial peer review done by VN engineers. And we did add 2 additional intersections to our study. So initially we did 4 signalized intersections and 2 stop controlled, but we did add in the intersection of Joseph Carini Road at Research Parkway and Marlin Software Driveway at Research Parkway to see the impacts to those streets and driveways. And what we did do is we did AM and PM and midday peak hours of the adjacent street traffic counts. And we added in, from the peer reviewers' comments, the AM and PM peak hours of the generator counts. So what that means is that Amazon has taken efforts to get their delivery service professionals out of the peak hours of traffic so it does not impact the commuting public. And what that does is that it changes the peak and it puts an additional load on the street network basically between 10 and 11 a.m. and between 8 and 10 p.m. So we did traffic counts at those times as well. And we did use counts that were obtained previously, and we have sent everything up to CONDOT Policy and Planning, and they have approved all of our traffic volumes so far. We did also go out and do a photographic inventory of all the intersections we're looking at. And we also wanted to verify roadway geometries and lane arrangements out there. We also have historical 24-hour traffic data on Research Parkway that the DOT maintains and does traffic counts every 3 years. So we had that information available to us as well. Next slide, please. And what we did, we made our initial submission and we got comments from the peer reviewers. So we have incorporated those comments into a new study that has been submitted. And what we did do with our data is that we took our traffic counts that we had and we projected them out to what we call our horizon year, which is this year, 2021. And we did investigate whether or not there were any significant developments being proposed in the area. And there's nothing significant that would affect traffic in a major way out there. So then what we did do is we took our site-generated traffic trips and we distributed them to the roadway network and add them to our horizon year data, which gives us our build analysis. Next slide, please. And for what we are proposing and what we have from our client and our steady state operations is that we are looking at insignificant trips in the AM peak, which is just a couple of tractor trailers that we're anticipating would impact the traveling public. Our midday trips, we're looking at 148 trips, and our PM peak hour, we're looking at 136 trips. And comparing that to the old, back up please, Jeff, thank you. Just to compare that to the old Bristol-Myers Squibb development, you could see that their AM peak, they had 620 trips in and out of the site, and their PM peak, they had 533. So during the peak hours of commuting public traffic, we are significantly impacting it less than what was done when Bristol-Myers was operational. Next slide, Jeff. And just a little recap and a graphic of which intersections we're looking at and which ones are signalized and which ones are unsignalized. So we are looking at these signalized intersections along Route 68, Barnes Road, with the I-91 ramps and Research Parkway, and we are looking at what was formerly signalized, the intersection of Research Parkway with our site, and then we have James Carini Road, and north of that is the Marlin Software Drive, and then we have the intersection of Research Parkway with Carpenter Lane, and our new site driveway with Carpenter Lane. Next slide, please. Now we gather a lot of data, and what we do with that data is we have a program called Synchro, and what that does is we input all the volumes, all the lane arrangements, all of our traffic information, and what it does is it comes up with a delay at each intersection. And with that delay, it assigns a letter grade to the intersections. And each intersection gets a letter grade, A through F, just like you're in school, with A being great, F being failing, and D being acceptable to the traveling public. Next slide. And the intersections again here, and what I'm gonna show you is that we did color coordinate everything with A, B, C, D, and F. And the colors are there. So if you just click Jeff, what we did is we analyzed each intersection and we have the data here. And when we look at the tables there, we analyzed the AM peak hour, which is 7 to 9 a.m., the midday peak hour, which is 11 to 1 p.m., the PM peak hour, which is 4 to 6 p.m., and then we also added in the AM of generator, which is 10 to 11 a.m., and the PM of generator, which is approximately 8 to 10 p.m. And you can see that all of the intersections out there are operating at acceptable levels of service. We do have a couple that are operating at level of service D currently. You can see particularly the I-91 northbound on and off ramps in the PM are currently operating at a D. And the AM, the Barnes Road at Research Parkway operates at a level of service D. Everything else is A, B, or C, which is great out there right now. And next slide, we actually were requested by the peer reviewers to look at the holiday peak season for the client. And it's going to be the same situation. You just click Jeff that we did look at the same peak periods for the same times of day. So AM, midday, PM, AM of generator, PM of generator, but using the holiday volume numbers that the site would be generating. And what you can see is that there are a couple of extra Ds out there. We do have one location that is going to operate at a level of service F. It is the I-91 off ramp in the PM peak hour. And what we're going to do with that is we are, as I said, this is under OSTA purview, so we are going to be submitting all of this traffic data to OSTA. And what we have done is on the second line, we have what I call an improved line, and that is where we made some timing and some lane arrangement adjustments that we will be presenting to OSTA, where that F, we can get it up to a level of service D so that there should not be any noticeable impact to the traveling public. Next slide, please, Jeff. And then looking at some of the parking on site, we know there were some questions about parking. So what we did here is we created on the left, the steady state, which is 10 and a half months out of the year. And on the right is the holiday season. And what this does is an hourly pictograph of the vehicles that are actually parked on site. So you can see on the graphs themselves that there are bar lines that are the actual associate cars, the line haul trucks, the gray bars are the DSP drivers when they're coming in their personal vehicles. The orange is the DSP vans that are parked on site. And then we have the flex drivers as well. They don't actually park on site, but we did have their numbers on here. And what you can see is at the start of the morning, you can see that there's a lot of DSP vans parked on site. And they stay there until about 10 o'clock. When you can start to see the gray drivers come in, their DSP drivers come in their personal vehicles, and then you can start to see the orange DSP van lines come down and they swap. So over the course of a day, when you add up the cars that are parked on site from the associates, DSP drivers, and their vans, if it's the vans are there, you can see during steady state, we need just over 800 parking spaces on site. And on the right graphic, it's the same thing, except there's more vans during this time, and the more associates are employed by the company. So you can see by the green lines, when you add together the bars graphs, we need about 1,400 parking spaces on site for the holiday season. Next slide, please, Jeff. So what all this comes up with is conclusions and recommendations that we're going to recommend to the town and to the Office of State Traffic Administration. The left turns from Barnes Road onto Research Parkway. Currently, DOT guidelines suggest having a throat width of 30 feet to avoid conflicts with turning paths. It doesn't actually have that right now, so we're proposing to restripe the travel lanes on Research Parkway to 11 feet from their current 12 feet to shift over the center line to get this turning radius in so that there's no potential conflicts in the left turning vehicles from that Barnes Road onto Research Parkway. We will be putting the submitting all of this to OSTA, so they will be taking a look at the highway ramps with the traffic that we've proposed. Next slide, Jeff. And recommendations on, we're talking Carpenter Lane and Industrial Park Road, that's not right, Carpenter Lane. So what we're proposing on Carpenter Lane is to add stop signs and stop bars at all of the approaches. We want to install a raised median, which is right there that Jeff is circling, so that, you know, vans and associate vehicles cannot physically take that left turn out of the site, and they can't take the left turn into the site. So I prepared a couple of, if you go to the next slide, Jeff, I prepared a couple of turning movement templates for those movements. And you can see that on the left, if a van is trying to take a left turn out of the site, if they're not going to drive over curbs, they physically would have to go through the metal beam rail on the opposite side of the road to physically make that turn. And on the right-hand side, I show the opposite movement, the left turning vehicle into the site. They would have to do the same thing. They'd have to go over the curb and over some metal beam rail that we're proposing to physically make that turn. So we feel that this raised median is a great deterrent to eliminating any potential vans driving through, taking a left into the site or taking a right out of the site on Carpenter Lane and going out into the neighborhood, that we don't want them going that way. And they wouldn't have any means or need to go into that neighborhood unless they're physically making deliveries in that neighborhood. And next steps for the project is we are awaiting peer review comments on our additional analyses where we've incorporated the peer review comments on the initial submittal, and they will have to review our AM of generator, PM of generator, and all of our holiday analyses. So we're waiting for that. And once we have that, we'll go back to the Office of State Traffic Administration and start that process with them. Next slide. I will turn it over to landscaping unless we want to stop for questions now. I'm available.
Thank you, Mike. This is Wayne Violet, landscape architect with BL Companies, located at 355 Research Parkway. Just in order, if anyone has any difficulty hearing me, or if you'd prefer me to restate something, just please let me know as we go through. The first slide here, which I think is a great place to start, which is picking up off of the idea and that whole design goal of attempting to utilize the site. The area is cleared for the proposed development. So this is an existing area where we've tried to indicate on this plan approximately the vegetation to remain after the development. You see there the existing aerial and just some ghosted white areas of a lot of the vegetation to remain. That's important to know as we're looking at landscaping of the site, buffering, which is, I think, a critical component for a development like this. So we wanted to start there, and that's why I wanted to show this first. Jeff, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. So in addition to just kind of looking at the site, evaluating it from a landscape standpoint where we want to go, we do propose a zone compliant landscape plan hitting three of the main components: front yard landscaping, residential buffer, which I'll get into, and then parking interior and perimeter areas. All of these, we feel like we have a zone compliant landscape plan. We're doing that in a few different ways. So Jeff, if you wouldn't mind, the next slide. In regards to the residential buffer, especially along the east side of the site, or the southern end of the site, is what's shown here on the plan. Much of the existing buffer is to remain. For where this parking area is located closest to our residential neighbors, we are proposing supplemental evergreen trees in that particular area. The landscape plans call for 96 evergreen trees, 6 foot in height at install, to supplement the buffer in that particular area. In the area along the northern side of the page, or eastern side of the site, we've taken a look at some of the more recently installed vegetation and buffering that was there. That's all to remain. That's all outside of the limited disturbance for this particular project. So I'll have a nice consistent buffer along the perimeter here to really create a nice visual break for our neighboring properties. Also in this particular zone, this is primarily one of the fleet parking areas on the site. We are proposing large canopy trees within parking lot islands and along the perimeter of this particular parking area. That helps with not only with some additional screening benefit, but for adding some shade coverage on this particular parking area, which is a large parking area, and really helping blend with this particular site. Around the perimeter of the parking areas, which I think is very important, the kind of the maintenance aspect, where it makes sense in more highly visible areas between parking areas, we do have a lawn ground establishment. But in areas around the perimeter on the eastern side, as we get along the residential buffer, we've proposed a native seed mix that is comprised of grasses, wildflower, shrubs that are really kind of adapt to this area well and really establish this buffer area around the perimeter of the site. More low maintenance, something that's going to blend well into that vegetative buffer along the perimeter. And I did want to point out in this particular area, there are a couple stormwater management areas. The landscape plans do call out, which is an important piece of the overall aesthetic and site design for this project, is the stormwater. We are proposing appropriate establishment of seed mixes, wet and dry tolerant for bottom and side slopes of the basin, to really create a great, well-established stormwater management area that's going to provide some aesthetics for the site as well. Next slide, please, Jeff. Towards the northern end of the site, more of the same, in that we are attempting to add a lot of tree canopy cover, not only to comply with local zoning, but to also break up the large parking areas, break up that visual, add a lot of shade in these particular zones. So you'll see throughout all the parking lot islands and along the perimeters where we're showing large canopy trees, some ornamental trees in this particular area that are, I think, will really help complement the site. In addition, the stormwater management areas that are shown kind of in a bluish color on this particular rendering here, again, using appropriate ground cover seed mixes that'll handle wet and dry tolerant conditions and really help establish those for not only for erosion control, but just long-term establishment for habitat. Next slide, please. We wanted to show us a little bit of a sampling of the proposed plant list that is intended for the site. Very important to us is to create a diverse native habitat of plant material here, not a complete monoculture. We're using some of the favorites, including red maple, honey locust, and sweet gum on this particular site. Some of those are pictured here, kind of in that deciduous tree images. Plane tree, swamp white oak. Some of these are existing on site today. We want to utilize that data to provide a great landscape plan that's going to be there for a long period of time. Some of the evergreen trees, which are pictured on the bottom, include eastern white pine and eastern hemlock, which will really establish a nice, a solid border along our perimeter. And this just gives you a little bit of a sampling of some of the proposed site landscaping on site. As far as deciduous trees, from a quantity standpoint, I did want to make a point that we are proposing over 180 trees on site between parking lot area, perimeter, and interior, which is pretty impressive to really kind of create that continuous canopy throughout the parking spot. So I think that's an important note to make. Next slide, please. We did want to point out also within relating to the interior area of landscaping that per requirement, we're not only meeting, but we're exceeding that interior landscape area. In this particular northern parking lot, the requirement is about 3,500 square feet, and we're about triple that as far as proposed. That allows us to do the tree canopy coverage that we're doing, which really kind of creates just a better parking lot for this area. So we did want to point that out. They're about 3 times above the required amount. Next slide. And then again, for the southern end of the site, the large parking area requirements about 11,000 square feet of interior landscaping. We're proposing close to an acre of interior landscaping, which really allows us again to add that the great landscaping on the interior, including canopy trees, to add that shade, to add that breakup of some of these large parking areas. Next slide. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Chris Gagnon to review some of the building architecture.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Gagnon. I'm with BL Companies. Just going to do a quick overview of the building design itself. Unlike the other building facility that we have in town, this is a new construction. This is not renovation of an existing structure. The proposed construction for this site, these will be concrete walls. So it's essentially a concrete building, and feature of this building, the vans that are getting loaded up will be underneath a canopy out of the weather and elements for the folks loading up, whereas the other facility in town, it's a drive-through building where the loading occurs. So what you're looking at here on this slide, the first larger elevation that we're looking at is the north elevation, and this elevation represents what someone would see if they were pulling into the associate lot. So this is essentially the main human entrance to the building. So if you pull into the associate lot, and this is how people will enter the building. This other elevation down here at the bottom, that is the southern elevation. This is the loading docks, the 17 loading docks that Jessica mentioned. So this gives you an idea of the material and color scheme that is proposed with these buildings. Another thing to note, the height of the building is about 44 some odd feet, and an important feature of this building is that there is about an 8-foot tall parapet wall, which screens the rooftop units that are there. Just clicking through here. So then these eastern elevations and western elevations, that depicts what it would look like as you're looking at the long sides of the building with the loading canopies. So that's what these elevations depict. And if you can click on to the next slide, Jeff. And again, this is just a similar depiction. As we've noted, it's approximately 219,000 square foot building, and then it also has the canopies for the loading, and each canopy is approximately 5,500 square feet in size to keep the loaded vans out of the weather. And that's really it for the building itself. We have participated in an extensive third-party peer review of the building design documents that has been reviewed and approved by the town-approved third-party peer reviewer. And of course, we have done the appropriate utility coordination as well for the design. Move on, Jeff. Thank you very much, everyone.
So good evening. My name is Jeff Dewey of BL Companies. I'm the senior design engineer for the stormwater and erosion control. Let my computer settle out for a second here. I apologize for that. Doesn't like change apparently this evening. I just wanted to mention a few things. I'll be brief, and I'll be happy to answer questions at the end of the presentation, should you have any with regard to anything technical or the details with regard to stormwater management and erosion control. Basically, starting with stormwater management, we have a very robust stormwater management system, well far and above what's existing there today, for sure. We've designed to conform with the Wallingford watershed protection regulations. We far exceed the Connecticut DOT stormwater manual, as well as the DEP water quality manual. As a base summary for our design, we put roof areas into infiltration trenches to get some more of our the surface water into the ground, to try to emulate as much as we can more natural and existing conditions. We're proposing 9 stormwater management basins and 8 sand filter basin systems, both with a multifaceted treatment train approach to water quality. We also have the incorporation of subsurface infiltration outlet systems for most of the stormwater basins. Again, reintroducing any stormwater collected on site back into the ground for groundwater recharge. What we've also done is we've designed a system to have multiple discharge points to minimize any runoff concentrations, as opposed to having a couple large basins where we would collect a lot of the runoff and have concentrated discharge points. This way, we spread out our discharge points in many different areas to try to emulate a more natural condition. We've designed the system so there'll be no increase in the peak runoff rate or peak runoff volume exiting the site. As far as erosion control, again, it's a very robust design, keeping in mind it is within a watershed protection district. So we've gone over and above with our design standards and methods. We far exceed the DEP erosion control manual. Some of the highlights of the system, we propose the temporary parking to be impervious surfaces. And even though it's temporary parking, it's going to be directed to an oil water separator prior to discharge. So we'll maintain water quality during construction, even for the contractors' vehicles. We've designed the system with multiple temporary sediment traps, and we use the temporary sediment traps instead of basins. So similar to our stormwater management system, what we want to do is have multiple sediment traps throughout the site instead of a few larger ones, which helps us control the runoff management, as well as potential sedimentation and erosion issues, as well as having multiple discharges instead of concentrating construction-related runoff to just a couple areas. We've actually gone so far as to provide hydraulic analysis of the temporary sediment traps. And we've designed level spreader systems for the temporary sediment traps to ensure that there will not be erosive velocities leaving these traps. And we've further incorporated secondary settling basins to give us a belt and suspenders approach to the erosion control system. So we have multiple layers and levels to control any potential for sedimentation in the runoff. In the plans, we've also provided direction on intermediate erosion control stages, as well as designing 4 phases for the erosion control plan, which again is far and above the DEP requirements. As part of the project, we have been working with the water department as well as our erosion control peer reviewer, and came up with a plan to provide some drawdown of both of the existing ponds to again give us that belt and suspenders level of control of any potential sedimentation in the site runoff. We've also provided a contingency plan, which includes staging and the incorporation of turbidity curtains and stop logs at key site areas, should all the efforts that we already provide in our erosion control plan, if there's happen to be an issue during some catastrophic storm event or what have you, we have a whole nother level of contingency planning to be able to enact to handle any potential issues. I'll take a minute here to just go over our stormwater management treatment train system. Again, the roof area is discharged into infiltration trenches. All the catch basins on site, not just the last ones, each one will have oil water separation hoods and 4-foot sumps. We've designed sand filter systems in accordance with the Wallingford Aquifer Protection Standard, where we use, instead of the typical DEP water quality volume, which is a 1-inch runoff volume, and this is the Wallingford standard is a 1-inch runoff volume, assuming all surfaces are impervious. So that's assuming, say in the winter, if all grass areas and such were frozen, and you get 100% runoff essentially. And they will all be, this 1-inch runoff volume will be directed into hydrodynamic separator systems and then into sand filter beds. Flows beyond that 1-inch runoff will be diverted to stormwater management basins, which have a sediment forebay size per the DEP standards, and ours are a little oversized for a protection level. We also provide 100% storage of the water quality volume in each of the stormwater management basins. So again, the water quality volume is essentially addressed in 3 different places: in the hydrodynamic separator, in the sand filter beds, and again in the stormwater management basins. And basins are designed with a minimum of 12 inches freeboard for the 100-year storm. And again, our management basins are directed to infiltration trenches. So once again, there is no increase in peak runoff volume or rate leaving the site. This is how we designed, knowing it was in a aquifer protection area. So we pulled out all the bells and whistles. We've worked very diligently with town staff and peer review to come up what we think is an extraordinary management plan for both stormwater management as well as erosion control. That's all I have to say. Again, I'd be happy to answer any technical questions anyone may have. At this point, I'd like to pass it back off to Mr. Cody for our summary and conclusion.
Thank you, Jeff. This is Tom Cody again. In conclusion, this application is for the redevelopment and reuse of a developed site. As you've heard from a number of the presenters, we've tried very hard to maximize the reuse of the existing infrastructure and development footprint on the site. The application complies with the bulk and dimensional requirements of the zoning regulations. The inland wetlands permit has been approved. During that review, which was some 5 months in length, we went through extensive peer reviews of all aspects of site engineering and stormwater management and erosion controls. We worked with the peer reviewers, we worked with town staff to come up with a project plan that really meets or exceeds all erosion control standards and meets and exceeds all stormwater design standards. The Wetland Commission approved the application. There are a number of conditions of approval which will ensure that the plan will be implemented correctly as construction proceeds. We've done extensive traffic analysis. Mike Dion explained to you the traffic impact study. No significant impacts to the area roadway network. We've also provided, at the request of the peer review consultant and Tom Talbot, we have provided holiday traffic information, which we believe continues to show no significant impacts to the area roadway network. Mike pointed out one location coming off I-91 at the holiday peak where we can propose to DOT some traffic mitigation that would address that one question there. But otherwise, we think that the traffic impact study shows very good levels of service throughout the roadway network after the project would be built. And we've also specifically implemented design measures at the Carpenter Lane entrance to make sure that the adjacent neighborhood is protected and that traffic would not move through the neighborhood. It would instead travel to and from Research Parkway exclusively. So with that, that concludes our presentation. We're very happy to answer any questions that you may have. We're all members of the team are available. Turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pull it back into and ask if any commissioners have any questions. Just raise your hand and I'll call on you first. Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that presentation. Before I have some questions that I wrote based upon the presentation. I kept flipping through the volume of paper that's been submitted. I request, since this is a virtual meeting, that the PowerPoint be submitted to the town so I could look at some of the information? I know we have some of it in letters, but I didn't have it as complete as you just presented. So would that be possible?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, actually, Mr. Fitzsimmons,
Chairman.
we've
Yep.
already submitted the PowerPoint to the town. So yes, of course,
Okay.
it's available for the public's review.
Okay, thank you. I guess, you know, hearing your presentation, I would pretty much echo the chairman's comments from about an hour ago when it began, that you asked us to begin this, and it's your application, which you submitted 128 days ago to the town in January, and you've decided that you'd like to move forward this evening. But we really we have our hands tied behind our back because we don't have final maps following the wetlands review, and we don't have our peer review comments of your latest information that were submitted for traffic. So my questions will be related mostly to your presentation and the information that I've received over the last several months. But I must say at the very beginning of my comments that this to me is Groundhog Day. This is where we were several years ago, the last time we had an application on this site, where application was submitted, months went by, delays, and then we started to get different information at each meeting. So I certainly hope that I would support a continuation of this, but I'm not looking for, you know, a repeat of a Groundhog Day, which we had several years ago on this site. It's a large site. I will say for the record, based upon your information, your application, I believe your application, you know, the use is permitted, you know, in this particular zone. But I think for me, this really falls to our section 7.5 of the special permit. It all falls down to the 7.5B, which is the criteria for evaluating a special permit, and number 1 is the appropriateness of location of use. For the next meeting, can the applicants please prepare written testimony or evidence regarding addressing all the criteria for appropriateness of location of use? Specifically, item A, the size and intensity of the proposed use or uses and its or their effect on and compatibility with the adopted plan development, the specific zone, and the neighborhood. And then B, the existence of other uses of the same kind of or character in the neighborhood and the effect thereof of said neighborhood. I think for me, I just think I need more information. This is one of those unique sites in Wallingford. It's a rather large site, but it abuts a rather substantial residential district. So for the next meeting, I would like some written information to review regarding how this application is appropriate for the of the location or the use. Specifically for that, in regard to and since we don't have the benefit, actually through you, Mr. Chairman, it's a question. Is the town's peer review person attending tonight's meeting, and are they available for questions?
Yes. I believe he is here. I'm gonna call on him after the commissioner's comments and the town planner comments.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess what a question, and I'm not sure who on the applicant's team could address it, but the Carpenter Lane access is a concern of mine because the prior use of this particular property, Bristol Myers Squibb, had a gated access, is my understanding, having lived in town and been on the commission a number of years, and you are proposing opening it up to full access with some traffic mitigation measures to control. And I guess my question is, did you look at not opening it up?
Mr. Fitzsimmons, I'd like to have Mike Dion just review with you the design for the Carpenter Lane entrance. It's not intended to be a full turning movement by any means. Mike?
Yeah, Jeff is going to go back to the slides, but we are, as I mentioned before, we are proposing mitigation to stop the ability of the vans taking lefts out of the site and lefts into the site. I mean, rights out of the site and lefts into the site. So we are mitigating that effort. They physically can't make the turn. As you can see that on the left-hand picture, they would have to go through the median, the metal beam rail on the other side of the road. So we are stopping that way. In answer to your question, we have not looked at closing this entrance and having everybody go out the Research Parkway entrance. Our client does like to minimize the interaction of the associate vehicles and the van traffic. So they try to minimize the interaction of those two entities to try and, keep things safer on site. So that's why we've got this other.
Okay, so I guess, and again, I'll leave it as, I appreciate that information. Thank you. I guess my question would remain is, can you look at your traffic count and potentially just use the Carpenter Lane for emergency vehicle access? And you don't have to answer that right now, but it's a question that I promise you I'll ask next month.
I'll definitely take it back to the team for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, again, without, and again, you understand, I live in town in Carpenter Lane. There's school bus traffic. There's a lot of residents that use that Carpenter Lane. And I get it. We have an industrial zone abutting a residential zone. So it is a unique piece of land, which is where I'm going. But again, I think I said at the beginning, I understand this is a permitted use. So it's all about appropriateness for this location. Here's a question, I jotted down. The term holiday, you mean the traditional US holiday. Do you consider Amazon Prime days holidays?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. This is Jessica Schumer from Amazon. When I said holiday, I was generally referring what we call our holiday period is the period from a little bit before Thanksgiving, so mid-November through the end of the year. However, as you do point out, the few days around Amazon Prime Day are also where we would expect a lot more volume at this site.
Then I guess if you could, thank you for that answer. I guess the question would be, during that Amazon Prime, let's call it the Amazon holiday, do you also anticipate adding staff, delivery, truck traffic during that time?
In the past, we have, run at a much higher capacity. I think it does depend a little bit. Last year, for example, Amazon Prime happened in October and was a little less intense given the COVID situation. And so, in these sites, I should also note, the way this site is proposed to operate is a somewhat newer way of doing things. We've learned some lessons from older sites, for example, when we run the vans. And so honestly, I'm not 100% sure, and I'm happy to get back to you to see what the business intends and how long that Prime period could potentially last. But remember, Prime Day is only 3 days. Obviously, there's build up before of it, but I can get back to you on that.
I know it's not just a holiday at my house, so that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, but that would be the only other time outside of the traditional holiday season when we could see something close to that peak holiday period. There wouldn't be any other. But I will find out if they run closer to the steady state or closer to the holidays.
Okay, and I guess I'm interested for the next meeting, some additional documentation regarding, Amazon Prime days, the last couple of years. There's no question you've had explosive growth, COVID, everything else, but I guess I'm concerned about the traffic because the holiday period, I understand retail is traditional, but I know Amazon does their own things, which is the applicant. So or the potential applicant. I just want to make sure I understand the time period.
Of course. The one caveat I will say is this year would be the first sort of more traditional Prime Day when we've sort of been running this model of delivery station, this sort of more updated version of it. So I will look into what we have, but it is somewhat, this will be the first one where we've sort of had this model more widespread.
Okay, thank you. I'll look forward to that next month. And then I guess, again, I'm not sure who on the team might want to answer this. I've received a lot of correspondence. This is probably for the applicant's main representative. You have all the correspondence we have, correct? All the resident letters?
We believe we do, Mr. Fitzsimmons. We've reviewed the packet that you were provided with tonight that's attached to the agenda.
Okay, because one of the questions that I jotted down from one of the letters was, I didn't hear any information in the presentation regarding outdoor or exterior lighting and or pollution, so to speak, the impact of the light pollution and noise pollution. For example, the trucks have the braking lights with the outside speaker system. Could someone address the potential noise that might be generated from the use and operation of the facility?
Sure, Mr. Fitzsimmons. The team is very well aware of the town code, the noise code, chapter 144. And chapter 144 sets noise limits for industrial sites, and they're based on the surrounding land use types, and they're measured at the property line. For this site, being an industrial emitter, the key numbers will be that to industrial zones, it can't exceed 70 decibels, to commercial zones, 66 decibels, to residential zones during the day, 61 dBA, and then at night, 51 dBA. We have retained an acoustical engineer, and he has looked at this and believes that the project will comply with the town code for noise. We can provide you with a summary of his findings. We're happy to do that, but he has looked at it and believes that the project will comply.
Thank you. Could you please make sure to share that with the town staff so the commission could review?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. I guess if I'm going to go back to it, I don't want to monopolize. I just have a couple more questions based upon the information we have at hand. if I heard correctly, and I've looked at my notes, the I-91 north exit, if I understood correctly, is moving from a D to an F. And I think the presenter said that they have some more details they want to present to OSTA to address that getting back from an F to a D. Is that something that will be shared with the town or just the state?
This is Mike Dion with BL Companies. That is in our report, so it is going to be shared with the town. We will share it with the state, and the local traffic authority for the town can actually bring this up to the OSTA as well, because they'll have input in the OSTA process.
So I guess a follow-up question. Did I miss it in all the information I have of what your plan is to bring that from an F to a D?
No, I did not mention that. It was, it's, because, well, it was actually, it's part of OSTA's review, but I can tell you that what we were thinking of doing is restriping the ramp from I believe it's a double left now with a single right turn lane, exclusive right turn lane. And we'll actually be turning that middle lane into a left-right lane so that we can have a double right and a double left.
Okay. I guess if I could have followed through to you through the chairman, is if I understood your presentation and documentation you've submitted, this particular project is not proposing any roadway improvements. Is that correct? Other than restriping.
That's correct. So this will be up to OSTA to decide if they want to do this.
Okay. And sorry.
No, I was just going to say, but we will provide them with all the data.
All right. I want to be clear because the way it was presented, just to be clear, the state requires our approval before they will act. Am I correct in the process?
That is correct. So the OSTA requirement is that P&Z approves things first, and then they will review it.
Okay. And then I guess my last question, actually, Mr. Chairman, is to you, and I don't recall the commission having a conversation. I'm referring to exhibit 401-21L, which is the executive summary from B&L. It's the executive summary of the traffic study, and the last sentence of the first paragraph says, "It should be noted that for the town of Wallingford planning purposes, delivery station shall be interpreted as warehouse." And I wasn't sure either through the Mr. Talbot or anybody else if that's been a staff position, or is that what the applicant is proposing to us? Because as I said, I think warehousing is something that I consider approved use in the zone, but their documentation just says delivery station shall be interpreted as warehouse. And I don't recall the commission receiving any interpretation or being asked to agree to that statement. All right.
Jim, all I can tell you about that is I think that's an assumption on their part based on the fact that they received approval for the same type of operation as a warehouse on South Cherry Street. That was not, that predates me, so I don't know if there was any sort of formal determination that in fact it met the definition of a warehouse. But I think that's what's happened here is they're operating under the assumption that because that was approved as a warehouse, this can be approved.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, this is Tom Cody. Part of the reason why that's included in the traffic summary is really just to make sure that the terminology is understood. As you heard from Jess Schumer, Amazon refers to facilities like this as a delivery station. We wanted to just point out that it is a warehouse under the Wallingford zoning regulations. That's what it was treated as for the South Cherry Street project, and we consider it to be a warehouse for zoning purposes here as well. We just happen to also use this additional term, and we wanted to be clear about that. That's why it's there.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those are my questions for now. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Another commission member? Mr. Cohan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start off by saying, Mr. Fitzsimmons, that's a good segue into some of my questions, and I'm going to briefly touch on some of the comments Mr. Fitzsimmons brought up. I want to go back to the delivery station versus warehouse because I had that underlined myself. And this is where I'm going to disagree a little bit with Mr. Fitzsimmons, that I asked many months ago to, that the commission should provide a specific definition of what a warehouse is. And I was a little taken aback, I guess, by that line in the executive summary and actually in the overall application, because, in my humble opinion, this is not a warehouse. This is a delivery station. And according to our regulations in the industrial zone area, delivery stations are not allowed. So certainly warehouses are, but again, I don't see this as the classic definition of a warehouse. So, that this is a bit of a sticking point with me. So I'll leave it at that. But I think it's an important point that either the applicant or the commission or, the new town planner, and welcome to Wallingford, has to, reconcile, what this application specifically is. So I'll go next to Carpenter Lane. And, I echo the same sentiments as Mr. Fitzsimmons about the use of Carpenter Lane. And I don't think that, I heard the explanation of why the applicant wants to use that. They don't want to mix the, personnel coming in and the delivery vans going out. And quite honestly, this seems like a traffic issue for this site as far as Amazon itself. And I do think that factoring in not using Carpenter Lane is going to be, a very important point for the commission. You have that modeling software where I think you should be able to figure out whether this is an A or an F, as far as how the traffic is going to respond without using Carpenter Lane. The next thing I want to talk about is just the overall other traffic, in the access to 68 and 91. And I think the traffic gentleman stated that he looked at the horizon year and did not see anything. Well, there are two, and I think it was mentioned on the meeting, there is another warehouse on Northrop in Wallingford, and there is a pending other warehouse right down the street in Meriden. And, I think that traffic from there coming and going is going to contribute to some of the issues we have with this site. So, you know, you mentioned the Synchrony, I believe, software, modeling software. What I would like to see is, you know, you've determined that the levels of service are, you know, fall into the good category A, B, C. And what I would like to see is what numbers will push this to an F. How many more additional trips, you know, where you did the traffic study will increase, you know, this to an F. You know, it should be pretty simple to do with the modeling software, but I think, you know, I could see, you know, a C level of service if you add, I don't know, 20 more trips. Does that make that an E? Does it make it an F? So I'd like to know what that number is. Mr. Fitzsimmons did touch on the noise and the light, which I had jotted down as well. And you mentioned 51 decibels at night. And I'm just wondering what the duration of, you know, when you have these tractor trailers backing in, you know, what is the duration of, you know, the backup signal? You know, is it, you know, 10 seconds? Is it 15 seconds? Are these trucks continuously running at night? So, you know, some of that additional info I'd like to see. And I think my last comment is, you know, there's a 219,000 square foot warehouse. What I was looking for with the additional parking areas, you know, when you showed the picture from the existing Bristol Myers to what you proposed, it was striking how much larger it was. So what I'd like to have, and I didn't see it in any of our documentation, is kind of an overlay view of the existing Bristol Myers with your site on top. And I'm just wondering what the total surface area is, including the warehouse and the parking lot, and, you know, anything else that's going to make up, you know, the entirety of the site. So those are my comments, Mr. Chairman. I'm set.
Thank you, Mr. Cohan. Just as a reminder, the chat box is to be used for when public is going to be speaking. So please try to refrain from using the chat box for anything other than for you to do the public hearing piece. Do I have any other commissioners? Mr. Allenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, it took me a second to unmute. Just wanted to thank the applicant for the detailed presentation. It was very involved. I appreciate that. I also want to thank Mr. Fitzsimmons for his detailed questions. They brought a few things to light. I'd like to agree with his sentiments on and his request for a written explanation of how this use complies with section 7.5. I think that we need to see that and see how this will comply. I would go further. He highlighted A and B. There's a couple of sections that just aren't applicable, but for the most part, I'd like to see that whole section addressed, please. I think it would be very helpful to us in going forward. I did also review a memorandum. It's in our packet labeled as 401-0 21J from Allison Kapuscinski, our town engineer. It had several comments and questions. I did not see a response from the applicant to that. And I would like to see a response regarding some of the concerns that are raised here. There's a lot of them, and if I go into them, we'll be here all night. The document should speak for itself, and hopefully at our next meeting, the applicant would be willing to provide a response to that memorandum. Couple other comments and questions that are after the responses. The proposal regarding the 91 off ramp, that's coming from southbound going northbound, correct?
It's the northbound off ramp.
Okay. So if I'm going north on 91, it's the off ramp.
That's correct.
So I would take a right to go towards Durham or a left to go towards Cheshire.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if you're aware, that traffic control signal is marked with a no turn on red only, and that's because of an obstructed view because of the guardrail that's up there. My question is when you're proposing having that center lane that's a left turn only being used for left and right, would OSTA even approve that given the obstruction of the view in your experience?
It would still be a no right turn on red for both lanes there. So yes, I do believe they would.
Okay. Okay, I'm concerned about that because even though the sign's there, there's a lot of right turns on red that happen. And with 2 lanes doing it, especially with tractor trailers doing it with their turn radius, that can cause additional problems in offloading the highway there. So that's one of the issues that I noticed. For the next presentation, I would like to hear a little bit more, if you can, and I don't need to hear it tonight, please, but more on the parking area that's offset and the use for it and the justification of such a large parking area, given the number of vans, number of flex drivers, and number of associates. We heard about 100 to 150 associates, 90 flex drivers, and there's 5 to 10 times that amount of spaces. So for the next presentation, if you can shed some light on that, I would appreciate that, please. There was a comment that was made about, and I'm going to totally butcher the job title, the sound engineer. The gentleman who was going to look into the lighting and the sound. Behind the property is Eversource property. They've got the high voltage lines, and the vegetation has been almost completely removed from that whole strip. So really, the only insulation of sound would be what would be left on the property, and because that property dips, and this is just my basic high school physics class telling me that it's going to create echoes of sound. So when the sound engineer does present or provide us something, if he could visually inspect that adjacent property owned by Eversource and provide us some data on that sound, that would be very helpful. I think that's it. I don't really have any other questions. I just would like to review the further information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Any other commissioners have any other questions before I send it off to the town? Okay. Commissioner Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I do have a number of questions. I don't want to monopolize, and I also feel as though I don't have all the information here tonight to be able to ask all the questions that I want in a thoughtful manner. But there are some questions that I think I could ask regarding the presentation that was provided. You know, I'm very hesitant to even ask this question because I quite frankly get offended when people make presentations to us about the economic impact of an application, because that is not really our role and a consideration for us in this forum. However, there was some testimony regarding the types of jobs that would be provided and the number of jobs. And so one of my questions is, there's going to be a considerable number of vehicles that will be parked on this property and will use this property on a regular basis. And the testimony was that those vehicles would be owned by Amazon and leased back to the DSPs. My question is, will all those vehicles be registered in Connecticut?
This is Jessica Schumer from Amazon. Yeah, the vehicles that are operating in Connecticut will be registered in Connecticut. Occasionally during our peak holiday period, we have to rent some vehicles just to help with the demand, but the ones that are in the steady state, we anticipate being registered in Connecticut.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that response. The other, you know, coming into tonight, after looking at the responses to the peer review and reading those responses, I was left with the impression that there were additions and revisions that were made to the original traffic study. And I was left with the impression that there would be a revised traffic study that would be submitted for review. Is that not what's going to happen here?
For the record, Mike Dion with BL Companies. Now, there was a revised traffic study submitted where it included additional intersections that the peer reviewer wanted, as well as the holiday analysis. So that has been submitted.
Oh, okay. Can you tell me when that was submitted? We don't have, at least I do not have that in my packet.
April 30th.
Okay, I assume that we will be provided with that in the coming days. Certainly, it would be useful to see that, and it's part of the reason why I feel as though I'm not really in a great position to be asking too many questions. There were, does that revised traffic study include the number of
Mr. Hines, 1 second. I just, our town planner can shed some light on your last question.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm sorry. What I think you received was the executive summary of the full 700-page revised traffic study. It should be in your packet under 401 dash, what is that, 21L? 21L. Yeah, that's the, I think it's 20 some odd pages. That's the summary, but the full report, we have, it's, like I said, it's a 700-page report. We have that, and if you'd like a copy, I can get you a copy. You do have the executive summary of the revised traffic.
The executive summary that I have is three pages. Is that what we're talking about?
Great. Are you talking about the next one? And
oh,
so it sounds like we need a little more detail on that.
Yeah, the revised traffic study was uploaded on. Well, before the meeting.
get it. Yeah, I'm sorry, you have the, yeah, that is only a,
Why don't we'll make sure, why don't you make sure the larger report is provided to the commissioners?
Full report?
Well, no, I don't.
Thanks.
So the full reports, yeah.
But, okay, let me check and see what the problem is.
Commissioner Hein, he's gonna look into, they're gonna both look into it to get us more information.
Okay, fair enough. I'll move on while they're doing that, but the revised traffic study, does that include the number of trips that are anticipated during the holiday season?
That was the primary reason for the revised traffic study. It was in essence to justify. It was an attempt to justify all the parking spaces that are being shown on the plan and which were not accounted for in the original traffic study.
Fair enough, thank you. There was a couple questions just to dovetail off some of Commissioner Cohan's questions. I know in some of the documentation regarding the traffic, there was a representation that there were no known pending applications or construction projects that would affect the traffic in this area. There are actually, as we sit here tonight, there is a pending application for additional warehousing on Northrop Road. My question to the applicant was that project given any consideration in your traffic study?
And for the record, Mike Dion with BL Companies. We were not made aware of that one, but we can include their traffic into our study. If we're going to look at Carpenter Lane entrance, we can easily add the warehousing on Northrop Road to our.
Yeah, I really would appreciate that, only because when we're talking, at present, without even considering that project, during the holiday season, we're looking to bring we're at an F at one of the intersections. And we're trying to do things to bring it up to a D. And that's not even including this other warehouse project that would run along the other side of 91. And I assume that the vehicles from that facility would be using the same entrances and exits on 91 right there. So that is a concern to me. I would appreciate it if you could include that information.
Yep, we definitely will.
My other question was, I know there was some testimony regarding the use of Carpenter Lane. Would any of the vans be using Carpenter Lane as an entrance or exit? I know obviously the associates would, but would any of the vans be using that entrance or exit?
In our traffic study, we did include some of the vans using that entrance and exit. That's why we showed that the vans could not take the right turn or left turn into the site, right turn out of the site, left turn into the site. That's why we showed that, because we did have some of the vans going that way.
Okay, I appreciate that. My understanding from the earlier testimony was that there would be no additional vegetation planted along the eastern side of the property. Is it possible to add such plantings?
Wayne, can you handle that?
Hi, this is Wayne Violet. Can you repeat the question? I didn't happen to hear that.
Yeah, sure. If I understood your testimony earlier correctly, I thought you had said that you had inspected or taken a look at the vegetation along the eastern side of the property, and you thought that it was adequate to provide a buffer to the neighborhood to the east. I mean, is it possible to add some plantings there if that would relieve some of the concerns of the nearby neighbors?
Yeah, so thank you for repeating that. So yes, to answer your question shortly, we certainly could add more plantings. What I meant by evaluation is there's been, over the last couple of years, there was an effort to fill in some of the gaps, we'll say, of the existing vegetation there with blue spruce and white spruce planted kind of on the slope and near the top of the slope. Some of that is there currently, and most of it's doing, fairly well. But yes, to answer your question longly, we can certainly supplement that, and we'd be happy to do that. But there is some recently installed buffer material that's intended to do just that and fill in a lot of those gaps currently on site.
Okay. I appreciate that. I know that that's one of the concerns that we saw in some of the letters from the neighbors. Sorry for jumping around, but my notes are kind of all over the place. There was some testimony that there would be about 25 to 35 tractor trailers per day and about 80% overnight. How many tractor trailers are expected during the holiday season?
Do you want to take that? Or you want me to? I believe it's around. This is Jessica. I think our traffic study shows around 63.
Okay. And would 80% of those still be overnight, or would you see more of those during the day?
Yes, no, it's still overnight, 80%, roughly.
Okay. All right. When these tractor trailers make deliveries overnight, how long do they generally stay at the property? How long does it take to unload them? And do they, after they're unloaded, do they stay or do they immediately leave the facility?
What often happens is the kind of get this term right. I don't know which is the tractor. The tractor will drop off the trailer, and then the trailer will be unloaded by the associates until a new trailer comes, tractor trailer comes. They drop off their trailer and take the empty.
Okay. And generally for each tractor, how long does each tractor generally stay?
It has to be unloaded, obviously. So, the tractors start arriving, tractor trailers in the evening. Our associates, the shift starts between 1 and 2 a.m. So they'll be there until the associates come. But then once they start unloading, as soon as someone can, we have enough dock doors at this site. There's 17 of them, I believe, where they'll always be in a dock door. They're not just going to sit, I think, on the site, undocked or untrailered.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get an idea. We have a neighborhood, to the east there. And I'm trying to get an idea of, how long is this going to be a constant hum of a tractor trailer engine?
They're off when they're. First of all, we don't allow idling, so the engines are off when they're loading and unloading. It's just the trailers in the dock door, and then the tractor is only the engine's on when it's coming, going, or getting its trailer attached or detached.
Okay. I mean, are they in a drop off and a pickup? In that procedure, I mean, is that tractor there for longer than an hour at the site generally?
The tractor or the trailer? The tractors are not there that long usually. They're dropping off, picking up, leaving. The trailers might be there for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned about the trailers. I'm more concerned about in my opinion, it's the tractors that make the noise and are they in that process of dropping off a trailer and picking up the empty trailer? I mean, how long of a process is that? Is that less than a half an hour?
I haven't seen it actually happen, but I can find out. I don't believe I think it's a lot less than a half hour. I don't know if anyone else on the team knows the answer to that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense, if you're talking 25 to 35 tractor trailers a night, what does that equate to, and how much noise is that going to be and how long is that going to last each night? But yeah, if you could get back to me, I'd appreciate that.
Also add that, we have the tractor trailer, the truck bay in red, if you want to go back to the site, the color coded site plan, it's sort of nestled in the site. So it's not really close to much, it's between the two sites. I believe it's not as close to any residential.
Yeah, so it would be on would it be on the southern end of that? If I understood, it would be on the southern end of the building, correct?
Yeah, I'm now just all oriented, but yes, as Tom said, north is, it's the southern end of the building, yes.
Yeah, okay. And I would also echo Commissioner Allenson's request for responses to the town engineer's comments. It looks like from the dates of everything that you may have submitted your responses to the peer reviewer before the town engineer made her comments. So I think it was probably just the comments kind of crossed in the mail. But if you can directly respond to the town engineer's comments and concerns, I would appreciate it. I think that would be helpful for everybody here involved. I think that's, at this point, that's all the questions that I have. I do have additional ones, but I think I'd rather wait until I have the traffic study before me. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. Commissioner Matarazzo, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's something to be said for going last because most of any concerns or questions I have all been asked by my fellow commissioners. One additional question I would ask is to the types of trailers, and I'm not sure if there's going to be any refrigeration units.
No refrigeration.
No refrigeration. Okay.
These are standard packages. These trailers are not carrying like groceries or anything like that. These are the standard packages you get. Okay. And they're not even big. The size is generally the ones that would fit in a TSA bin in an airport. So we have a separate delivery system for our larger things like washing machines or TVs. Gotcha. Or even bigger items.
Okay, I appreciate it. That's all I've got.
Thank you. I'm going to bring it back to ask our staff, our town planner, if he's got any questions or comments.
I just wanted to say thank you to the commissioners for their comments. I've taken those into account. I'd like to just reserve further comments until such time that we receive the final peer review of the revised traffic study. and also the finalized site plans before I can make a determination on the project.
We do have our traffic engineer that did the peer review. If maybe we can have him just give a brief update on what he's seen. And I think it's Christopher
Van Zanten.
Van Zanten.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. Can I ask questions of the applicant at this time, or is that just making comments, or is that, I think, you know, we haven't gotten through too far through the actual analysis of the report. A lot of my comments and questions right now are based on the presentation and kind of a cursory review of the report, having flipped through it. One of the questions that a few of the other commissioners did bring up with the background developments, we had 1117 Northrop Road and 850 Murdoch in Meriden. Those were two developments that should be accounted for in the study. I believe Allison had noted that to the applicant, but it might have gotten lost somewhere along the way. We had brought up in our original peer review, there were some crashes at the intersection of Research and Carpenter. Just looking at if there were any improvements that could be made there, the applicant responded that potentially some clearing could be made there to improve the sight lines. We just want to look, you know, see what they were planning for that, and if there was any impacts, you know, making sure there's no wetland impacts to doing that. One of our questions also is the trip generation. They mentioned that in their response that they've submitted similar tenant-specific trip gen. We wanted to see if the applicant has submitted for step 1 with OSTA to determine, you know, to get their feedback on the trip generation that they're using for the proposed development. Though that can be submitted concurrent once the planning and zoning application has been submitted, so it is something that could be started now. They did provide an hourly breakdown of the trip gen. We noted that in the revised report. We're going to be reviewing that with regards to the synchro analysis that was provided. They also did provide a holiday peak analysis that we'll be reviewing. They did provide a comparison with the trip generation for the proposed tenant-specific trip generation comparison with ITE rates. They provided it with regard to high cube facility as well as warehouse. The tenant-specific trip generation does fall in line with what they're using it for the midday and the afternoon peak. The morning is much lower. It seems like they're not having too much volume during that, except for during the holiday peak. We did want to get a little more info on the improvements. If those improvements, we wanted to see if the improvements that are being proposed in the off-peak analysis, basically the non-holiday peak, are being modeled the same as in the holiday analysis. We noted that there's basically in the two analysis charts, that summary charts, there's build with improvements, and we wanted to make sure that those are consistent throughout. The improvements that they used in the off holiday analysis are consistent with the holiday analysis. We did note Carpenter Lane. We had some questions on Carpenter Lane. We wanted to, you know, we noted just in a quick review of the distribution of the traffic, it's about 50% of the site traffic going out Carpenter Lane, and we did wonder kind of the same thing as the other commissioners, if there's an opportunity to send more of that traffic out toward Research Parkway at the signalized intersection that they have. I think those are operating okay with the volumes that they had, at least in the off-peak, off-holiday period. and would be curious to, see if all the traffic could be routed through that driveway. There's two benefits to that, opposed from a few other benefits, but in addition to what the commissioners had noted, the sight lines looking to the east, exiting that Carpenter Lane exit, they are, they barely meet the minimum requirement for intersection sight distance, and vans exiting there could, we have concerns if there's a lot of traffic coming out of there. Vans don't have as good of acceleration and as a passenger car. So just if the applicant could look at that a little more, I think that would be a good thing. And also by having fewer traffic exiting at that driveway, you would have fewer trips going through the intersection of Carpenter with Research Parkway, as well as Carini Boulevard and the Marlin driveway too. So you'd kind of be sending a lot less along Research. So I think there's some benefits there. And then one other item with the parking, the van spaces I think are proposed at 1,033. Based on the holiday peak chart that was provided, it looks like there's about 800 max vans to be used, and just seeing if all that extra 233 spaces are absolutely needed for this development. I think that was it for our initial comments, and we'll be documenting these in the future report to the commission.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Fitzsimmons, you have another question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Chris. Thank you for your comments, Chris. I just have a question, and I'm sorry to be so mechanical on this, but you are now doing a secondary review of the additional information submitted by the applicant, correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right. And I guess the question through you, Mr. Chairman, to the town planner, because of the unique nature of the peer review, as the applicant provided the funding and approval and go ahead for the secondary review of this?
Not as of yet.
Not as of yet.
It's imminent.
It's imminent. It's in the process, but they are
Okay.
Going to submit.
Okay. Okay. I guess the reason I'm asking that question is, as we said, and the chairman noted 2.5 hours ago when we started, the clock's running now. So I don't want any delay to allow our peer reviewer to review and comment to the commission and be prepared at the next meeting to discuss his comments and recommendations to the town or the commission, or his review of their information. So will there be enough time between the May and June meetings for Chris, you to review the information?
If we get that go ahead soon, we'll get right on it.
Okay.
We should be able to turn it around fairly quickly.
Thank you.
One question I do want to bring up is if they want to submit a revise, knowing that there's some background developments that weren't included in this second study, does it make sense for them to kind of revise that and resubmit, and then we'll do the review, or if they want us to just review what they've submitted on this?
Tom's coming.
That's something that we can discuss in the office, Chris. How you're going to proceed from here. I don't think that's really something for discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I might, and I have nothing but enormous respect for Mr. Talbot. Most of the commissioner's comments have been related to the traffic and the study. I think we need to make sure an assurance before we go to the public, before we continue this and to next month, that there'll be ample time for our peer reviewer, paid for by the applicant, to present their findings to the commission. As we said, we acknowledge that, some people didn't comment. We're not even at the public yet, but there seems to be a lot of questions. Has happened 2 years ago. Again, my Groundhog Day reference, that we're just, the clock starting, and I want to make sure that everyone who's participating, both the applicant can present the information and our peer reviewer has ample time between this meeting and the next meeting to be able to provide the commission a cohesive report. So I don't know. And again, you know, Tom and I worked together for years. I just want to make sure there's time, and I want to make sure somewhere on the record, everyone acknowledges that the clock's running now.
Right.
So if I could go back to the first comment, we're waiting for some authorization of payment to the town to allow Chris to continue his work. And then separately, we're also waiting for the applicant to give Chris some updated information in addition to the 700 pages that have been presented. Is that correct?
No, that's my understanding of the situation right now is we're going to get payment from the applicant to enable the peer reviewer to conduct a peer review of this revised traffic study. We're not asking the applicant for any additional information before the fact. I'm not sure how that even came into the mix. I can also tell you that I discussed this today with Amazon. I expect to have payment, not tomorrow, and certainly by the end of the week, Jim. So it's not as though it's not up in the air, and it's not as though it isn't on the table.
Thank you for that clarification.
We may have payment tomorrow. I can't guarantee it, but
no, thank you very much, Tom. I appreciate. Obviously we were prepped for this meeting. That's what I just want to make sure Chris has what he needs so he can do his work for the town and for us. So the next time we discuss this, we'll have his complete report. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. We have all the commissioners have gone, and we have the town. What I'd like to do is open it up to the public. Few things. One, please state your name, your address. Please stay within, please, the regulatory side of this. And on the chat side, which the chat box is really for me to call on those. So please, on the chat box, ask if you would like to speak, and I will call on you in the manner in which these all come. So I am going to start, and I have a Bob DeMeo.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. My name is Bob DeMeo. I live at 14 Marie Lane, and I've been a town resident for over 25 years. And while I am absolutely in favor of this property being developed, this application, unfortunately, would have significant negative impact on residents' safety and quality of life, including, frankly, destroying the character of a large rural residential neighborhood. This is a unique piece of property based on its location. Frankly, it's a little concerning that the applicant would return with something, once again, that in my opinion is incompatible with the nearby residential community. Also, frankly, from a tax perspective, revenue perspective, virtually empty building with a massive parking lot is not something I'm excited about as a taxpayer. And I know this commission in 2020 approved the Amazon station on South Cherry Street. And as you guys well know, that's a very different district that allows heavy industrial uses, has a different character, doesn't have a large rural residential community directly adjacent to the site. So adding an Amazon facility to that site in the I-40 didn't materially change that area. What this application is proposing in the IX, directly adjacent to a large rural residential community, would change it dramatically, and not for the better. In fact, your zoning classified the residential area around 5 Research Parkway as rural residential. And as you all know, High Hill Road is adjacent to the site, right? There's 250, 300 homes up here. I don't know if commissioners recall this, but in 2000, the year 2000, the town purchased 94 acres at 218 High Hill Road as protected open space. At that time, the mayor said it was an important acquisition for preserving the town's rural character. That's our neighborhood. The town purchased High Hill Road property to preserve its rural character 20 years ago. This application, unfortunately, would destroy that for area residents. Now, listen, I understand warehouses are in high demand. They're hot. However, that should not mean the town feels pressured to lower its standards on protecting the welfare of us, the residents. Hopefully you won't do that. I also know, having listened to these for a number of years and being around a little bit, I know this isn't a popularity contest, and kudos to you all, the town, the commission. You have well thought out criteria in your regulations. So just a couple quick comments on those. I know it's going to be a long night, so I'll just go quickly here. There's been a lot of discussion around roadway issues, Carpenter Lane, Research Parkway, Route 68, et cetera. And I have great concerns about all those roadways. And so I won't spend time there, but your town engineer also pointed out in her memo where Route 68 becomes a single lane in both directions around Williams Road, trying to make left-hand turns on or off or into Route 68 from Williams or High Hill, as she stated, gaps in traffic are rare. So I don't know if any of the traffic analysis has gone that far down, because that's a serious issue, trying to get in and out of Durham into High Hill Road at the southern end. So I would just bring that up. And it's already rough in that area. So I'm just wondering what's going to happen when we've got 300 or 1,000 vans introduced into the area, 120, 150 at a time, coming out every 20 minutes, flex drivers, 100 or whatever there is between 4:30 and 6. That's going to create significant traffic and safety issues, as well as, frankly, diminish the quality of life for all of us to live over here. And I know the applicant really wants to focus on so-called peak traffic. I mean, they really want us to focus on that. The focus needs to be on 24-hour trips. We live in a neighborhood 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And by my math, from what I could tell, when there was 340 vans coming out, the trips were going to be around 2,200. I don't know what it is when there's 1,000 vans coming out. Maybe the total trips per 24 hours goes up to 5,000. In either case, 2,200 or 5,000, I'd like you to point out that that intensity over a 24-hour period exceeds what existed at BMS. Okay, 24 hours, not peaks. In fact, you can look in the applicant's traffic study. It's in your packet, revised May 2021. On page 20, they call out a Wilbur Smith report, noting the highest level of BMS trips were in 2003. There were 620 in the morning, 535 in the afternoon, for a total of 1,155. Now, we all know that was basically all the traffic on the site. I mean, maybe there was a little during lunchtime, but you're talking about 1,100, maybe 1,200 total trips over 24 hours, not 2,000 or 5,000 or whatever this is going to be. And let's not forget one other, another critical point. With Bristol Myers, we're talking about cars, right? State the obvious here, but now we're talking about a fleet of vans and trucks that never existed on this site being introduced to the neighborhood. That's a significant change. So we've got increased trips over a 24-hour period, vans and trucks that's never existed on this site. And then to make it exponentially worse, we're going to operate 24/7. 365 days a year, what would be 260 days for a 5-day-a-week business. So that's 105 more days per year of operations and traffic beyond what has ever existed on this site or in this neighborhood, nonstop. Talked about tractor trailers, obviously. I mean, once again, something that's never existed on that site, overnight tractor trailers. We know what that brings. And lastly, and I'll close out here, one of your criteria is the preservation of the character of the neighborhood. Well, when you look at the overall implications of this application, I frankly can't even begin to imagine how anyone could possibly review this and say this is preserving the character of the neighborhood. So, as I said, I would like to see this site developed. I mean, I truly would like to see this site developed with something appropriate. Your regs allow many uses in this district, right? The IX district. I think you might even be adding more in the future with text amendments for data centers. Wouldn't that be great? That would be perfect. This is a unique site. I believe your criteria for evaluating a special permit clearly shows this site and the neighborhood is not appropriate or compatible with the intensity of a fleet vehicle delivery station or like warehouses, no matter who's running it. So as a result, I believe this application should be denied. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. will be Thorpe Ave.
Good evening. My name is Will Brennan. I live on Thorpe Ave. For those who don't know, we are parallel to research. We connect with Carpenter as well as Carini, so we're in close proximity to this project. I would like to begin by offering preemptive feedback to those who will tell myself and others that we should accept some changes as we are in the IX zone or move. I cannot speak for streets other than mine, but as some of you might remember, it was not always zoned this way. Some of you may recall the work that my old neighbor, the late Joseph Catrona, did to help preserve the residential rights to the homes on Thorpe Ave. As these industrial projects continue to engulf neighboring properties, the peace of mind that we had in our homes is going with them, not to mention resale value. Specific to 5 research, I would like to first point out what I feel to be covert strategies to move this application forward. I attended the Wetlands Commission meetings only to hear them approve the application after a verbal, not documented promise to abide by their condition of approval, which a board member stated was unprecedented. In the last planning and zoning meeting, which was advertised as a public hearing, the public were not allowed to comment. Lastly, and I think most importantly, there is not a single sign on the property, on the 5 research property, informing the public about tonight's hearing. There is one sign that speaks about the April meeting. The lack of transparency is alarming. Regarding traffic, similar to the 2018 applicant, traffic generated by this proposal will be a disaster. I reviewed the traffic study that was attached to the agenda tonight, which detailed the 2003 study of the Bristol-Myers peak traffic. This is an unfair comparison, as at that time they were not facing current traffic generated from already existing Amazon site, Food Bank, East Side Auto, the new proposed Proton, the new warehouses that are coming up. So I'm skeptical of the validity and reliability of the 2020 data that was presented to us. The left turn onto research from 68 remains a huge issue. If you're unlucky enough to get stuck behind one tractor trailer where the light is red, you're guaranteed to sit at that light for another cycle. Multiply this by hundreds, and you have a recipe for chaos. Mr. Fitzsimmons mentioned earlier tonight school buses from Carpenter. As schools go back to in-person learning, how does this factor in? There's mention in the documents that the added parking spaces are there to account for peak season. Combine this with peak seasons from the other large businesses on the same stretch of road, such as Amazon down the street or the Postal Service. How will this factor into cumulative traffic? Echoing what many have already mentioned tonight, Amazon may be a good company, but it's not a good fit for this location. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen Frechette?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, I just want to point out, I know that a couple of years ago, we filled the, the town hall and, taking into account that really only one person per household can be on this without getting like crazy echoes in their devices, that, every person here is representing a family that has been basically living in fear of what's going to happen to this place for 2 years now. Obviously the first project was a disaster, and I feel like everyone who's commenting is kind of seeing how that disaster is going to play out, including the commissioners. So just like, I would like the applicant to consider, like everyone else has said, the neighborhood, and what is best suited here. We already know that the IWWC doesn't have staffing to monitor the water once the project is complete. We know this is going to create a ridiculous traffic jam. My students, when they tell me, oh, I did enough to get a D, that's usually not the case. So, it's going to be majorly congested. And I feel like we all live in town, that is those of us who actually live in town and are not proposing this disaster, right? And we already know what the conditions of the traffic in that area are. We also know that under OSHA, there's approved noise, you know, backup alarms. That's going to be 24/7 from those tractor trailer trucks, most of which are coming overnight. And, you know, I just hope, I know that this is probably not going to be resolved for a while, but, you know, I really do hope that no matter what they do, this is just not appropriate for the neighborhood. And I hope that you'll vote it down. You know, the applicant purchased this property for pennies on the dollar. And now it's proposing the lowest and worst use. This isn't just bad for the neighborhood. This is bad for all taxpayers. This is not going to generate anywhere near the revenue that Bristol Myers squibs. So again, in addition, I want to say like that Carpenter Avenue entrance and exit is going to be a disaster. Like I, like most people in the neighborhood, probably go out of my way to avoid Research Parkway. I use Carpenter. I take the long way. So I go all the way from High Hill, all the way down Carpenter. I don't turn onto Research. I go to the end of Carpenter, take a left, and I make my way out to 68 that way. Now I'm going to be competing with vans from Amazon, with their employees. You know, the applicant said that the vans aren't going to be able to come up to High Hill, but certainly the employees are. Like certainly a regular car like we all drive will be able to navigate that right turn. So I feel like there's a lot to think about, and I really hope that the applicant takes this into consideration and comes back with a proposal that's not anything like this. Thanks for your time. And you guys are doing a great job asking all awesome questions. Thank you.
Thank you. James Wolfe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Jim Wolfe. I'm a member of the Economic Development Commission here in Wallingford. And I do have a question for Jessica Schumer from Amazon. And that is that you recently opened a last mile facility on the south end of town, which, by the way, you did a beautiful job and it runs very well. But if this were to be passed, would that eliminate that last mile facility, or would they both continue to operate?
Mr. Chairman, is it okay if I answer?
Yes, through the chair you can.
Well, yeah, there's no intention of eliminating that other facility. This would be an additional dot on the map. They would be serving different areas. So we can, you know, get back to the commission on exactly how that works, but they're not intended, I believe, to serve the same area.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all the questions I have at this time.
All right, thank you. Larry Jones.
Yes, I'm Larry Jones. I'm a new resident at 4 Marie Lane, but I've lived here in town for 15 years. I've actually made it a point when looking for a new home to remain here in town, and was happy to find the home that I did. Just a few questions, and I don't know if they can be answered tonight, but I think they should be answered overall. First one is about the stormwater, and the civil engineer mentioned that they're exceeding DEEP's requirements with respect to quality and quantity of stormwater. In the years that I've lived here in town, the stormwater, we do have a sort of stormwater problem. You know, the more impervious surfaces that happen increases that. And so I was curious about, they mentioned exceeding it, but by how much and how are they exceeding it? I mean, they mentioned their BMPs, but I wanted to hear from them a little bit about exactly which of DEEP's requirements they're exceeding and by how much. My second concern is about acoustics, which other people have mentioned as well, and the idea that this is a 24/7, 365 facility. And the whole point of me and my family moving to this neighborhood was it is quiet. It's away from Route 5 where I currently am. And so it would be good to see what the acoustician comes up with with respect to measuring the acoustics currently and what they expect it to be, even with the vegetation that they're putting in. And lastly, it's just a general question. I don't know, should this be approved, they talk about economic development. Is there a requirement for Amazon to actually hire a certain number of people that live here in town versus surrounding areas and actually giving employment to residents here?
Thank you. Adelheid Kopfer?
Yes, thank you. I live on 35 Whiffletree Road. I have, I think, 3 questions. I might have missed the answer to the first one because I joined the meeting later. The concerns that the Inland Wetland Watercourse Commission still had those been addressed before tonight? Or is that still ongoing?
Mr. Chairman, this is Tom Cody. I can answer that quickly.
Okay, thank you.
The Inland Wetland Commission approved the application for the wetland permit, and they have included in that decision a number of conditions of approval, and that decision letter has been finalized and forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So that review is done.
Including the concerns they had, or resolving, I should probably say, those concerns.
Yes, they were all resolved because they approved the application unanimously.
Okay, I just wanted to remind the commission that this will affect the stormwater runoff and whatnot, will affect our drinking water supply in town. The other question, or the next question, going back to the discussion of the peer reviewer being paid and having enough time to revise, if I understood correctly, and I might be wrong on that. I think the effort is for the peer reviewer to review the revised traffic study, but does that revision, I think there has been an additional request tonight to include the planned facility on what's, sorry, I forgot the name, Northrop Road on the other side of 91. So I think the question is, will the peer reviewer include this additional request from tonight in his review?
Through the chair, Tom, you want to answer that one?
Well, the peer reviewer can only review what the applicant submits to the board. So I think before the peer reviewer can do anything with that, the applicant would have to submit additional information concerning those projects. That has to come first. Then the peer reviewer looks at it. Peer reviewer does not. Peer reviewer is just that. They review the work that the applicant's traffic consultant submits. They don't. They're not an independent. It's not an independent traffic.
No, I understand that, but to my understanding, at the moment there is a 700-page review. Revised traffic study that the town peer reviewer will review, but that does not include yet the additional facility on Northrop Road.
That's correct.
So is it possible to include that before? I think you just said that. I just want to make sure that this will be included before the peer reviewer starts that work, correct?
Well, I think what's probably going to happen, given that time is an issue for everyone here, I think what will probably happen is that the peer reviewer will start work. Hopefully, ideally, this is what would happen. The peer reviewer will start work on a peer review of the revised traffic study. Hopefully, sometime during the course of that peer review, the applicant will submit additional information concerning those Meriden projects. At that point, the peer reviewer can incorporate that into his overall peer review comment. But he can't incorporate that in those projects into his comments until he gets something from the app.
Sure, sure. Yes, I just want to make sure that this information, this additional information will come from the applicant to the peer reviewer before any final decision is made. And then the last question I have, there has been a lot of discussion about noise pollution and light, not so much about light pollution. My question would be, has air pollution ever been any, is there any data on additional air pollution? I mean, the number of vans and trucks that we're talking here that will add some serious, some considerable amount of air pollution as well. And I know that Amazon just ordered, I don't know, 100,000 or more electric vans, but I assume those won't all come to Wallingford. So is the emissions and is air pollution ever been discussed, ever been a part of the application or the discussion at all?
Sorry, this is Jessica Schumer from Amazon, if I may. The site is actually being made ready for EV. You are correct in noting that we do have 100,000 vans coming online by 2030. We're deploying the first 10,000 in 2022. It's not clear where they'll go yet, but we are getting this site ready for if and when those vans should come.
That's great, but I still assume that not all of the vans being deployed in Wallingford will be electric. So is the air pollution of all those additional vehicles being taken into consideration in any way? Or can it be added?
It can be, but it hasn't been, and typically it's not. Most projects, that's not something. It's not something specifically called out in the regulations, but under the special permit provision, could require that kind of information. I'm not sure what kind of information you get, but the commission could ask for that kind of information from you.
Okay.
May I ask that the commission please request that? Thank you. That would be all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ed Homan?
Good evening. My name is Ed Holman. I live at 12 Murray Lane for the past 21 years. I've been practicing in the town of Wallingford for the last 35 years. I would like to comment on the work of the commission regarding the language changes to the I-5 IX regulations. Most specifically, with regard to the Watershed Protection District, Section 4.13 of your regulations. As most everyone knows, the 5 research property sits in a critical watershed protection district, which feeds the Mackenzie Reservoir, which in turn supplies the majority of the town's drinking water. The proposed changes to the Watershed Protection District regulations that are under discussion are to better protect the town's drinking water supply. Back in November 2020, this very commission felt comfortable enough with the proposed water division regulation language changes to share these proposed changes with the nearby Lower Connecticut River Valley Council of Governments and the South Central Regional Planning Commission as required. Both planning authorities reviewed the proposed languages and in November 2020 communicated their approval. After months and months of discussion and workshops, 2 years worth, this commission endorsed these watershed protection district changes for a vote at your December 2020 meeting, but it was decided to delay the voting that night. Then came the January meeting and a letter from the Mayor Dickinson to your commission recommending to not vote on the language changes to the Watershed Protection District, IX and I-5, so even more work could be done looking more closely at I-5 and IX zones. Due to all these delays, the 5 Research Parkway application being discussed tonight came in under the existing Watershed Protection District regulations. And as a result, this application includes 1,500 parking spaces on asphalt 4 times the size of the building. Unfortunately, we're at this point today because you didn't adopt the Watershed Protection District regulation changes proposed. The proposed changes would have limited the maximum allowing parking for a facility of this size and employee base to 227 spaces, rather than the unlimited or 1,500 parking spots in this application. This application needs to be denied. The proposal is completely unsuitable for this parcel of land from both a water protection perspective and a negative impact on the welfare of the residents in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine Mansfield.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Good evening. Christine Mansfield, 29 Tammy Hill Road. I want to thank the commission, Amazon, and all the residents. There's been so much detail and analysis in this particular proposal twice now. And you have to look at some of the opportunities on the table to only know that there's passion on both sides. There's opportunity on both sides. You think about Amazon, you've got 110 active fulfillment centers in the United States. You have 105 globally. You've experienced record performance revenue. I mean, your omni-channel success. And to look at a town like Wallingford, we're only 45,000 people. We're only 39.9 acres. We've been around for 352 years. To look at a town like Wallingford, we're not surprised. We love it just as much as you want to. You want to expand just like we all want to. We want our families to expand here. We want our children whose buses are right down the street from you to expand as well. So we're not surprised. You're here. We love it. We love our town. It's got a long legacy of a commitment to business, to community. Partnership has made this town thrive when few towns have in a pandemic. If you just look at our beautiful electric grid, it's probably salivating to you to know that you can expand in such a great town as you already have. Your people live here, they work here, as do ours, as do our families. And so folks, tonight, it's not just about decisions. It's X's and O's, it's dollar signs. We all know that. We know how hard it's been. Amazon, you've worked hard. You've reaped the rewards of it this year. Many of our families have not. They have not recovered. We know how precious those tax dollars are. We know how the balance is. So tonight, your decision, I feel for you y'all in this seat. You've got balance tonight. And the great news is that we're putting our trust as neighbors in your hands. This is your legacy. Planning and Zoning Commission tonight. The next legacy of all stakeholders that we talked about, every person, every piece of information, every lawyer has talked about stakeholders. Every piece, I think, exhaustively, hundreds of hours of testimony have added up to tonight. For every voice gets a count tonight, isn't it? It's about, of course, business and revenue. We love those taxes. It's about our residents. It's about the wildlife. It's about the reservoir. We're all well up here, but I mean, it feeds our town, not just our town, but it's also a backup for the Southeast Regional Water Authority. Those are stakeholders too. Protected classes, public classes. These stakeholders tonight, the environment, our businesses, our neighbors, and culture and history of Wallingford, the legacy tonight is on a vote. It's a pivotal vote, folks. Make no doubt about it tonight. You will set the destiny for the next 50 to 100 years of all of those stakeholders. Our neighbors, our house, our property values, they're dollar signs, folks. But again, as important as that is, we are Wallingford strong tonight. And we take this decision really seriously. It's not in my backyard. It's been in our backyards for decades. It's never been about that. It's been about balance. And for a town like Wallingford, your Planning and Zoning Commission, your mission, as you've so wonderfully done 2 years ago, you listened passionately. We love companies like Wallingford. We love all the hundreds of companies that are here. But tonight's about balance, folks. It's about balancing what planning and balancing with zoning. The regulations, the rule of law is here. We know what the rule is. We know what the expansion of the rights have been. It governs what people do, what businesses do, and what they cannot do in our cities, our suburbs, and our towns. That's the zoning side of your business. You do that so well. And tonight is also about planning. There are two words in the commission's title and our mission tonight is planning and zoning. We can define the black and white of zoning, but we also have a commitment to the 352 years of history and to the next generations that come behind us in the planning, which also balances the private property rights with the company, with our community's character, our desired character, and what's actually still here. So tonight, commission members, we implore you to vote for all stakeholders and balance the rights for today and for the next 352 years, because it's not just about us. We owe it to our children. We owe it to the wildlife. We owe it to the water and the reservoir of the 30,000 residents who owe it for the reservoir to have water when there's a drought. So I'm asking and imploring you tonight, commission members, please, we love Amazon and companies like that, but it's about balance. With their, again, find the right property. We have other elements. The 184 other centers, the 109 other active fulfillment centers found the balance. Tonight, we implore you to stand up for us and find our balance, not just for us, but every stakeholder impacted by this. It's your legacy and ours, and we thank you for your time and your diligence tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to bring it back to the applicant to see if they have any more comments or any additional comments. If not, we'll bring it back to the commission.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we've taken note of all of the comments that have been made. We've taken note of the remarks from town staff in particular and the peer review consultant. As was suggested, we will be getting back with the town to present answers to the questions that the commission's asked. I think the best thing to do would be for us to package that up, make a comprehensive submittal to the town that addresses all of these questions. And we would try to do that expeditiously and put everyone in a position to be back here at your next meeting with questions answered and ready to move to the next part of the discussion.
Thank you. Bringing it back to the commission members. Any commission members have anything else you'd like to discuss on this application? I'm not seeing any.
Nope.
Do we need a motion to continue this? I'd entertain a commission member.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the commission continue the special permit public hearing for the application 401-21 to our regularly scheduled June meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor, starting with Mr. Fitzsimmons,
Yes.
Mr. Cohan,
Yes.
Mr. Matarazzo,
Yes.
and Mr. Allenson.
Yes.
And I'm yes too. So we will continue this to next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We look forward to being with you next month.
The next application, item number 4 is a special permit. Sagaro Mobile LLC, 180 Cheshire Road, application 403-21. I am going to ask our secretary to read in the correspondence. And I am going to ask our Mr. Commissioner Fitzsimmons to preside over this application, as I am going to recuse myself. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, we have a special permit number 403-21, special permit for a 480 square foot cigar lounge structure accessory to a country club at 180 Cheshire Road, zoned RU-40. We have interdepartmental referral dated March 11th, 2021. I really can't read the writing on who signed this. We have correspondence dated April 26, 2021 to Nicholas Giordano. We have interdepartmental referral dated March 11th, 2021. I believe signed by the fire marshal. And I believe the last one I couldn't read was also the fire marshal, I believe.
Yeah.
We have a memo to Planning and Zoning Commission from Department of Engineering dated April 28th, 2021. And we have the application for a special permit number 403-21 dated 3/8/21, and a set of plans with that. Which I believe, I'm not sure, this is a, I believe that's it. I have a duplicate set of plans here, but they're dated, received prior to the other ones. So I'm not sure if one's revised or not.
Thank you so much, Rocco. Yeah, the revised plans were received May 6th, along with the letter from the attorney, right? Okay, thank you very much.
The other ones are dated March 11th.
No, we
The ones I
received
read in.
we received in our package attachment 403-21F, and that letter also included revised plans.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. If I could ask the applicant to introduce themselves to the commission and give us a brief overview of your application, and make sure you talk about all the vehicle and van trips you are going to have this associated use.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Greg Pietzu. I'm an attorney. I represent Sagaro Mobile LLC. I'm joined tonight by Nick Giordano, who's a member of the applicant. We have been authorized to file this application on behalf of the property owner, which is the Farms Country Club LLC. And I know it's late, and hopefully you'll be relieved to know that the structure here is only 480 square feet, so slightly less than the prior application. I don't know if they're still on, but at one point, Mr. Flandro, who's the GM of the Farms, was on, as well as one of its members, John Frank. I'm not sure if they're still on. I know the.
I'm here. Yes, this is Rich. Still here, Greg.
Okay, great. I'm not sure if I'm able to share my screen, but I can just give you a brief rundown in terms of what we're looking to do.
Hold on. Let me stop you. Yes, we do. Sure. We do want you to share your screen. I apologize. So if I'll ask the office to make you a presenter, and you'll be able to share your screen.
Okay, great.
Thank you. There you go.
Okay, now I have to open my preferences. I had this last time I was before you, so here we go. And I apparently need to restart, so let me log out. I'll log right back in.
Okay. You're on mute.
Muted.
Oh, there you go.
Muted. I don't know if maybe we can try that again.
Do we need to make you a presenter again? Is what you're asking?
Yeah, I think so, because I
Okay.
had to log out and log back in. My system perfect. We do that.
It's fine.
Sorry.
No, no worries. I have a short drive tonight. All right, you're back.
All right. It's telling me I have to quit now and restart. So if it quits, I'll be right back. I'm so sorry. Hopefully that's for the last time. If not, I will make do without sharing. So I'm sorry, if maybe one last time we could try again.
Third time.
There we go. It's always the charm. Here we are.
There you go. Thank you.
Does this come up?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, so just to sort of orient everybody, this is an aerial view of the farms. You can see in the lower left-hand corner is where the entrance drive is. The area in which we are proposing to place this small accessory structure sort of is in this corner of this red circled parking lot, which, as you can see from the photo, sort of is accurate, and that's essentially some overflow parking and some storage for golf carts. Where this arrow starts is the 9th green. You'll notice that this area is sort of set aside from the pool and the other clubhouse facilities. As the name suggests, part of what we're looking to do is have an amenity for some of the members and their guests to be able to enjoy a cigar. And I know that the club is interested in having this located somewhat away from the other facilities for that. The next thing that I just wanted to show is just a ground level photograph of generally where this is going to go. This was taken the other day. We wanted to show this in particular because one of the comments from the fire marshal was to be sure that we had adequate access and egress for any apparatus that needed to get to the site. And obviously there's no overhanging trees or anything in this area. Also submitted were some elevations. Again, this is not a huge warehouse. We're talking about a 16 by 30 foot structure. These are plans that have been provided by the manufacturer to give a sort of a general look of what this is going to look like. And here is a floor plan showing the 30 by 16 foot structure. We've gone ahead and we've put this onto a site plan. Again, this looks very familiar to that overhead aerial that you saw before. Just to sort of follow up on what the proposed use is, the Farms Country Club is at 180 Cheshire Road, which is in the RU40 zone, pursuant to sections 4.1C and 4.2C of your regulations. A golf course and associated clubhouse facilities are permitted by special permit. And of course, we have an existing golf course. This application is to construct a small 480 square foot structure, which will of course be accessory to the existing facilities, the pool and clubhouse, etc. As I mentioned, Sagaro Mobile is working with the farms to provide an amenity for the members and its permitted guests to have essentially a lounge area where members may purchase and store cigars. Currently, there is permitted smoking at the club, but it is sort of at a temporary location, which is pretty much adjacent to where this structure is proposed to go. So what they're looking to do is create something that's slightly more permanent. Of importance, I want to stress a few things that are going to be of importance to the commission. I would think, first of all, this is not open to the public. It's for members only and the permitted guests. In other words, if you're not allowed to be at the club now, you're not allowed to be at this lounge. So it is restricted in that respect. Likewise, because of that, this is not going to increase or otherwise affect traffic. We're basically just having a different area for an existing use. We're just providing a structure for it. A few other things that I wanted to mention in response to staff comments is that there will not be any exterior lighting on the small lounge, and there is not going to be any entertainment there. So noise and other things emanating from this structure will not be an issue. There is some plantings in front of the building that are shown on the plans, and I can actually kind of zoom in on that a little bit. So we do have some planting and landscaping in front of it. And in terms of the drive line from Cheshire Road, there's already some screening and existing vegetation between the southerly property line and the street. Because the pavement does come to the property line, there's really no way to, add any additional screening. But in our view, given the somewhat small nature of this proposed structure, we think that the screening is sufficient. This revised plan was submitted on May 5th. It was in response to comments that were received from the planning office and from the town engineer and from the fire marshal as indicated. Together with that, I also submitted a reply letter to those comments. I think that we've by and large addressed the concerns that were raised by town staff. I think the only two sort of things that are sort of hanging out there that I'd ask be included as conditions of approval are, number one, there was a question about, is there going to be a step or a ramp into this? And what I would ask, because it's sort of prefab, it's not like we're pouring a foundation or doing anything like that. So what I propose to do is have, as a condition of approval, either the town planner or the town engineer basically go review post assemblage the final grade, and if we need a step or a ramp or whatever that may be, we'll do whatever town staff requests. And similarly with the electrical service, that's the only utility that will be here. There will be no plumbing or any other utilities. There'll just be some very modest electrical service. There is a source of electric on site. It's not unfortunately shown on this A2, but the specific conduit, what we'd hope to do is show a plan and come in at the building permit stage and get that approved. So we'd ask for that electrical detail to be also a condition of approval. With that, I know the hour is late. I don't want to take up too much more of the commission's time. I think that's a rundown on this fairly modest proposal. We are happy to answer any questions that the commission may have, and otherwise would ask for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Let me start with commission members, beginning with Mr. Cohen. Commissioner Cohen, any questions?
No question. Looks fine to me. Thank you.
Mr. Hine, I should have asked at the beginning. I'm asking you to sit in place of Mr. Benoit. Do you have any questions or comments?
I do not. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Allenson, any questions?
Nothing from me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Commissioner, the Secretary, any questions?
Negative. All set.
All right. Going to town staff, any comments from town planner, either Tom or Kevin, any questions?
No, except that this is a public hearing. I don't know if there's anybody out there. But...
Yeah, there is. I'm going to go there in a second. Okay. We do have a question in the chat from a Rosina Pezer. Go ahead with your question.
Hi there, it's Feezer, but
Sorry.
I am at 185 Cheshire Road. And it was stated that the location of the structure was chosen presumably at a distance from the regular facility because of the smoke. And it's also stated in the packet that the golfers can purchase cigars, quote, for smoking during their rounds of golf. So my question is, how far does that smoking extend?
I'll ask the applicant to address.
Sure. I think the concern and the folks that are on from the farms and Sagaro will correct me if I'm stating this wrong, but the concern was having folks at the pool, by the bar, having cigars. So the concern was moving that somewhere else on the site that was not next to the pool, but also certainly not next to any neighbors either. So I think that you can see that the distance from the southerly corner of the structure to the property line is 79 feet. I don't have a specific measurement, but it appeared to my eye that it was at least another 20 feet from the property line to the edge of pavement. So, we're at least 100 feet away from the roadway. You got a 50-foot right away after that. So I think we're going to be.
I'll stop you there. It's not the structure itself. It's that they're able to smoke during their round of golf, which means that it will not necessarily be within that structure. And so
Sure,
how far does the ability to smoke your cigars extend? Because I have the driving range 100 feet away from my driveway. And if there's a line of people there smoking cigars, then that absolutely extends into my property. And my kids play outside all the time. So that's my concern.
What I would say is that I don't believe that there's a proposal to change anything with regard to what's currently happening. Folks are able to smoke outside, whether that's a cigarette, a pipe, a cigar.
Okay.
I think the hope is that with, what I've been told is that recently what they've tried to do is have a temporary area over here to try to, I don't know how to put it, but have a cigar smoking area. And by improving that with this facility and this lounge, the hope and the goal is to have an area that sort of will be where that is. I don't foresee, and again, the farms will correct me if I'm wrong, that folks are going to be congregating at the driving range for purposes of having a cigar. I think the idea is rather, if folks are going to have a cigar after a round of golf, that it would be here. Obviously, any golf course I've ever been to, from time to time, I see somebody on the 13th tee with a cigar. I think that's always been the case, and I don't think that's going to change. But certainly after a round or before a round, the idea is to have that in this area, so it's not elsewhere at the club.
Okay. Well, and while that is completely understandable, it did concern me that it said smoking cigars for their rounds of golf, within the packet, and that's the reason why it brought up the question. So.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I did actually have one question. I don't see any other questions from the public, but I had a question. Is the building going to have a sign or any type of signage?
There's no signage proposed at this time. We would have shown the sign detail if we did.
All right. Okay, it appears it's complete unless there's any other comments from the commissioner. Oh, did someone else want to speak?
Actually, it's Rosina again. My apologies. I'm just wondering, how would that be enforced then? Because also presumably then you're asking for a larger concentration of people to come and smoke cigars in this one area. How would it be enforced that they don't congregate in other areas? How is it enforced now?
This is Richard from the Farms Country Club. Can I speak?
Yeah, just please
Well,
get.
I'm concerned, sure.
Oh, well, hold on, please. If you could, gentlemen from the club, please just introduce yourself. You may provide a comment.
Thank you very much. My name is Richard Flandreau. I'm the general manager from the Farms Country Club. There is currently no specific area for smoking and non-smoking outside the building. There will be no additional smoking over by the driving range that you're referring to any more than there is now. I mean, people are allowed to smoke over there, but we will not have any congregating over there. The smoking area will be primarily at this corner of the parking lot, which is nowhere near the driving range.
Okay, so again, primarily, and then the question becomes if there
Hold
is.
on,
an
hold on,
issue,
excuse me. It's a public hearing, so I'll let you ask. You've asked your questions and it's been responded to. So is another zoning question related to this application?
I suppose not, if there's no zoning about it, but since I did have him on, then if there are people congregating in other areas, then how do we address that once it happens?
If I could offer that, I mean, this is, the zoning application is about the use of this and the addition of this. That is, so as far as the zoning is concerned, this is regarding the use of the building. The congregation of people at the parcel is no different than any other facility or use, so to speak. This is a private club, and that they. So,
But if it's a health concern for smoke in the air, then I would imagine that has to do with the zoning as well.
It does, but this use, the reason they're applying for planning and zoning is the location of the building. Okay, so unless there's any other comments, I'll ask if anyone would like to for a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Allenson. All in favor of closing the public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Would anyone care to make a motion on the application for the application?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve special permit for Cigarro Mobile LLC for a 480 square foot cigar lounge accessory to the Farms Country Club at 180 Cheshire Road, as shown on plans entitled Site Plan, the Farms Country Club Cigar Building, 180 Cheshire Road, dated 4/21/21, subject to the following conditions of approval. Number one, comments in interoffice memorandum from the fire marshal to the planning and zoning department dated April 27th, 2021. Comments in interoffice memorandum from Department of Engineering to Planning and Zoning Commission dated for April 26, 2021. Third condition of approval, electrical could be completed and shown on a plan pending the occupation of the building. And last condition is that the step ramp access into the building be approved per town staff requirements.
Okay, thank you very much. Motion's been made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Allenson. Voting beginning with you, sir. I didn't hear it. Steve, yes?
You're not coming through, Steve.
Yes. Mr. Hine?
Yes to approve.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Matarazzo?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Your application has been approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. If you could, yep. And I'll turn the meeting back over to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. We are going to the bond releases and reductions. Kevin, you have the bonds that could be released.
Yep, bonds 7 and 9 can be released.
Okay, so application 103-16, subdivision Rayout 322 East Main Street, and application 208-19, site plan Davenport Associates, 14 Fairview Boulevard. Those two?
Correct.
Okay. Do I have a motion for the release of those bonds? We're gonna do one at a time. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the first bond that was recommended by the town planning staff.
Thank you. Do I have a second for approval of application 103-16?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? I forgot, I'm a aye. Any nays? No, motion carries. How about the second one?
Mr. Chairman, I move again that the commission approve the bond release and reduction as proposed and recommended by the town planning staff.
Perfect. Application 208-19. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor with an aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to reports of officers and staff, ZBA decisions. Anybody have any questions on the decisions or the notices?
Nope.
All right, how about on our zoning enforcement officer, Amy Torrey, on the zoning enforcement laws? Anything there?
Not for me.
To approve that? All right. All right, and if everybody's okay, we'll go on to the correspondence, number 13. I-5-9 WPD regulations amendments, mayor's office. Anybody have anything in regards to that?
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, Commissioner Cohan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, the mayor had promised to have this updated, I don't know, back in March. I mean, he, as Dr. Holman stated on the call, he went through a pretty good history of the mayor and what we did with this language. We respected the request from the mayor to hold off adopting the regulations. The mayor promised he would have this worked out by the end of March. He did not. He stated another delay or whatever. And now we have another one. So we're going on, I don't know, 6 months with really something unknown to us as far as his intent on this, where he sees a problem with our regulations. And quite frankly, this could have, and probably does, have a major impact on the Amazon application. And the timing is just quite honestly suspect for me. And I think the commission and probably the public at this point really deserve a closer insight into what the issue is here. You know, he goes to say that, you know, he's considering hiring a consultant to advise him regarding the actual draft of regulations. And honestly, the last statement doesn't make too much sense. But anyway, I'm very unhappy with this note. And again, I think it speaks to you know, the again, Amazon application we're dealing with. So I'd like to have some insight in what the issue is here. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have anything? Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would very much like to echo Commissioner Cohen. I mean, I don't, we spent a lot of time and then we backed off at the request, but I almost would request that we probably propose a workshop where we can talk about it with, and let the town, present to the commission where they are, whether it's the water and sewer or engineering, but it just seems like this is something that we were assured things in the first quarter, we're in the second quarter. And, even if we put a workshop together for later in the summer, it's a long time. And I think, I'm all in favor of protecting it, but even the memo from the mayor's office just calls it the I-5 zoning. So I know it's more than just that. So, and it would make sense for us to kind of either ask for a workshop or even schedule a workshop and see if we can get them to participate in a workshop format.
So maybe I'll talk to Jim when he gets Mr. Seichter when he gets back and see if he will schedule a workshop. I'm all for it myself.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I agree. I mean, I think it's been long enough. I think, some of the people that spoke tonight had valid points regarding the delay and the timing of everything. And had we had all of this, really decided at this point and in place, I think it would benefit everybody involved had we had this issue resolved before any of these projects came about. And this is just the first one. We have another warehouse project coming up, and we're going to be running into the same issue with that. So it's really a mess, and it would probably be good if we got another workshop scheduled.
All right, I'll say something to Jim when he gets back, or Mr. Seichter, Commissioner Seichter. Sorry. But I will reach out to him on that. Does any other commissioner have anything? If not, can I have a motion for adjournment?
I have a question.
Is that a commissioner?
No, that's a caller. Yeah, I'm sorry. I tried that already once, but I will do it again.
Hold. Okay, Bill?
Yes, Bill Stuckey, 54 High Hill Road. Just want to make a point. During the public hearing on 5 Research Parkway, you never provide an opportunity for callers to ask questions.
Okay.
And I was one of those callers. So, once I got home, I went in through, go to meeting, but I didn't get an opportunity to ask my questions.
Okay. We will have it's public hearing has been continued, so you will have the opportunity to do it. If you want to ask question now for the record.
Sure. I think it would be helpful if you had a artist rendering of the facility from the perspective of High Hill Road. And 2, they said 300 to 400 trucks would leave between 10 and 12 noon. How many of those are leaving out the Carpenter Lane exit? And that was unclear. And 3, on one of the slides, which we weren't provided before the meeting, it said there were 148 new trips per day during non-peak. I don't get the math. With 300 to 400 vans leaving and 300 to 400 drivers arriving, I don't know how you get to 148. That was it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.
Anybody else have anything else commissioner wise? Not, call for a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? No? Thank you, everyone, for all your support. Appreciate it.
Good job,
job.
JT.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jim.
Jeff.
Bye. Thank you.